Hello and welcome to the British National Circuit Race Championships from historic Kirkcudbright in Scotland. We're in Dumfries and Galloway for the British Championships over the next few days. And of course, a couple of days ago, 10 jerseys will be awarded. And we've got 2 jerseys to be awarded tonight, the iconic red, white and blue bands of British champions. The women are lined up. They've got 1 hour of racing on a very tight, twisty circuit. More of that a little bit later on. And alongside me today to run us through what should be an absolutely spectacular race, which has seen plenty of cycling in the past, is Hannah Walker. Hannah, great to have you alongside me again. Always an exciting, thrilling race, and most importantly, we get to see a brand new national champion too.
Good evening, Matt. Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be such a terrific race here, and there's such a star-studded field as well, and it's always hotly contested, isn't it? National title at stake for these riders, and everyone, the nerves will start to be flown, but also that excitement. Who will take the national title, the red, white and blue bands, and that gold medal?
Well, in a few moments' time, we'll have a little look back at last year's race, held in completely different conditions, late in the year. This was held in Lincoln. What a spectacular national championships that was. Almost Kermesse-like, and it was Joe Tindley who soloed to a quite spectacular victory last year. Wonderful atmosphere. And that was last year's podium, and that is what's at stake. That's prestigious red, white and blue bands. Joe Tindley will be wearing number 1 again today, and importantly, she's got an exceptionally strong team, and arguably, I think, Hannah, the strongest team here today is in support of Joe Tindley. They
absolutely are, and when you take a look at the roster that they've got and just the way that they ride as a team, which is really important, they are one of the strongest teams on the field. And last year, Joe Tindley winning on home soil, which was impeccable. It was so exciting for the home crowd.
She's coached by Dean Downing, the former British circuit race champion himself. And there's a couple of non-starters from that squad, but they still do have a very, very strong team indeed. You can just see people enjoying their festivities here in this historic harbour town of Kirkcudbright. Anybody from Scotland listening in to me, I do apologise if I haven't quite got the pronunciation right, but let's have a close look at the circuit today. It's a very, very interesting one. We start and finish in St Cuthbert Street. We'll then swing a right onto Castle Bank, round into the High Street, left onto High Street still. It's a rather long High Street. Sharp left onto Castle Street, right back into St Cuthbert Street. 6 corners in total, and that is the circuit. There we go, 1.2 kilometres round, 1 hour of racing and 5 laps. So no predetermined laps. That'll all depend on how fast these riders do it. You can just see Johnny Clay on the right-hand side, himself a very, very good criterium rider. So quite a wide finish rate. The first real glimpse we've had to see. But with that dog leg at the end, it's going to be crucial to get into that final corner first, isn't it? Or at least in a good place, sorry.
It certainly is, Matt. And as always, positioning in a circuit race is always so important. And if you have a bad start, you could always put you off on the wrong foot. You find yourself chasing for a lot of that, trying to make up time, but positioning always so important. And that, just having a look at this finish, this hairpin, this final left-hand hairpin, you can see the weather conditions. It has rained, so for the riders, it could be quite slippery out there, but they are well aware of the conditions.
Yeah, we just saw them warming up just before we came on air. And there is the star sheet. These are a couple of riders we've picked out. Do you want to go through some of these riders, Hannah, for us? Riders to watch tonight.
Yeah, Joe Tindley, of course, with number 1 on her back, the defending champion of this circuit race title. Sophie Lewis has been in really good form, having taken a Tour Series victory in May, which she's been in great form. Megan Barker, likewise. Emma Jeffers has been a real revelation of the criterium scene in the last couple of weeks. Took 2 individual victories at the Tour Series. Josie Nelson has been spending her time over on the continent racing with Team Coop High-Tech Products. Elena King, very, very strong criterium rider again for racing for a UCI Continental team. Jenny Hull will be a really interesting prospect. Only last month won the European Paracycling Tandem Championships with Sophie Unwin. Sammy Stewart, one who has stormed onto the scene, and Isabel Darville, who has been very strong out in Europe and out in Belgium. So we've got 10 riders. Ella Barnwell also to watch out for, who's been very strong too.
Yeah, 56 starters today. We always get 1 or 2 non-starters, but 56 starters, and a very interesting shape of the peloton here. Of course, they're standing still. There's the Kirkcudbright Bay Hotel. We're right on the coast here in southwest Dumfries and Galloway. It's an area I know very, very well indeed. We've had Tour Series rounds here up in Castle Douglas, which is just to the north of this beautiful town. That'll be the location for the Road Race Championships, which we'll both be commentating on over the weekend as well, on Sunday. Big day of racing, but I really do like over the last couple of years, Hannah, and I'm sure you'll agree, the way that we're having all of the championships together. So the time trials, the criteriums, the circuit races, and of course the road races. It has a real festival atmosphere, doesn't it?
It's brilliant, and I think for teams as well, it's fantastic that everything is all together. For if you want to make a weekend of it as well, for the fans, for the crowd, you go up and make a weekend of the national championships, and you can go and stay in a hotel, camp out, take your camper van, whatever it might be, but have a terrific weekend with the family. And it is great, and especially for those who perhaps race on the continent, live on the continent, they're able, like last year we saw Ethan Hayter come over, do the criterium championships.
Yeah, we've got an exceptionally good field for the men. Once you've watched the women's, go and get yourself a cup of tea. Make sure you come back later on, because we've got the men's championships that starts in a couple of hours' time. But first up, there is Jo Tindley, unsurprisingly called to the line, and this will be the only time this year that she's not wearing the national champions jersey, because of course that has to be fought for tonight. But she's in great form, and there'll be another couple of riders just called up. But back to my point, it's a very, very wide finishing straight, isn't it? It's not particularly narrow. Now, the circuit last year, a wonderful circuit we had in Lincoln, but this is completely different. Pretty flat, but very wide.
Last year, how we saw, there was always a big jostle to get into position for those corners, because if you didn't hold your position or really fight for that position into one of the corners, you could come out, and although you might be sitting in the top 20, you could have 50 metres to make up, and those gaps in the elastic starts to snap. Whereas on this circuit, with it being so wide, there's so much space, and I think it is going to be very, very fast tonight, Matt.
Indeed. Well, it's about 15 degrees, so it's not too cold, not exactly too warm either, but ideal racing conditions. Slightly overcast, and we do understand there may be the chance of a few precipitations, perhaps a little bit of rain. As Hannah was saying earlier on, you could just see a couple of puddles, a couple of little bits of wet patches. But what I did notice was it seems to be what I would call, Hannah, quite a heavy surface. You get sometimes the road surface up in Scotland and in Ireland as well. It's quite heavy, a different sort of tarmac. It's harder to ride on, but it's far more grippy. So that final corner, it's nice and wide, it's technical, but even with wet conditions, given that grippy surface, hoping everybody should stay upright.
That is the word, grippy, and you see it's not a slick, soft, smooth tarmac asphalt, so it will give and provide grip for the riders. And I think they've had time to do sighting laps, warm-up laps, take a look at the lines that they want to take here on this circuit, and well aware of the weather conditions. What has it been? It does look to be that the rain is at bay at the moment, thankfully.
Indeed, you can just see that the Union flag on the left-hand side there. It doesn't seem to be blowing that much. Not too much wind today. We know how much wind can play a part in bike racing, but I cannot wait to get this race underway. We've got around a minute to go. They should generally, the first lap of the race is generally a neutralised lap, although we'll wait and see if that actually happens. If somebody does attack, well, no, it's not neutralised. A couple of riders there opting to hold on to the barriers. Some disco music on in the background. And you can just see that dogleg at the back of the circuit. It's quite an interesting circuit. When we saw the route map earlier on, it's almost like a strange panhandle, isn't it? It's quite an odd one. I like it though.
It's going to be one of those corners you need to get right, and if you do get it right, you can carry a lot of speed round that left-hand hairpin, and it's going to be vital that you've got the entrance and then the exit correct. Gear selection is going to be really vital and important on that hairpin there, Matt.
Well, just in the shadow there of McClelland's castle, dated back to the 16th century, and the town of Kirkcudbright actually dates back, or records show, back to 1455, even before I was born, actually, Hannah. So not long to go now. We should get the flag dropping. Criterium's circuit races always used to get me very, very nervous. It's very tense indeed, but here we go. We are off. This is the British Women's National Circuit Race Championships. And it does look to me, given the close proximity they are to that TV motorbike, that the first lap will be just one to actually roll. It'll be a neutralised lap just to get themselves familiar with the racing, and then it'll be underway. So nervous times, even in this neutral lap though, Hannah, you quite often get riders just jockeying for a little bit of position, so when the flag drops, they're in pole position, or at least in a good place. Yeah,
it's so true, and it's important that you, if you can, try and move up where possible, where safe to do so, that you can gain a few places on this this neutral lap. It's great to get everyone underway and have that one sighting lap before things get going for real.
Well, 1 hour and 5 laps. And given this circuit, so that should mean we've got about 1 hour and 10 minutes approximately of racing. And that's my rudimentary mathematics, remember, so actually maybe a little bit longer, maybe 1 hour 12, 1 hour 13 of racing, given the fact that it's 1,200 metres round. There we are, we're going actually down the back as part of the circuit now, soon we'll be going on to the home straight. So we start and finish in St Cuthbert Street, we then swing a right onto Castle Bank, then onto High Street. They're on High Street now, and High Street actually continues round this left-hander here. So we're still on High Street now, and then at the end of High Street we'll turn a sharp left onto Castle Street, then we'll head up back round into that finish. And we're getting a close look there of Jo Tindley. Wonder what her plan is today. She went away very, very early last year. It was a real dominant performance, wasn't it?
It was, and it was a very proud moment for Jo and the team. The way she rode, the way that she won that national title, but also in front of that home crowd, and one that she's been chipping away at for so many years. And I think for her to finally get that victory, she'd been on the podium on many occasions, and finally that gold medal, the red, white and blue stripes that she can always wear now on the cuffs of her jersey, should she not defend it tonight.
Definitely, as you say, you get that national champion, that champion jersey, you can put it up, but as you say, it stays with you for the rest of your career. And this weekend across the world, in fact, there are multiple national championships taking place. It always is traditionally just before the Tour de France. This is that corner. And although you can just see, you were talking about it earlier on, weren't you? The amount of speed you can carry through if you're in the front, but the amount of speed you have to shave off and lose if you're at the back.
We're on a neutral lap just as the motorbike gets underway, Matt.
Well, they've just passed through the non-neutralised lap. We're now into the racing, so the British National Circuit Race Championships for women is underway. We are here in Kirkcudbright, in beautiful Dumfries and Galloway in the southwest of Scotland, in this wonderful little harbour town. A few years ago, back in 2019, it saw the opening stage finish of the Men's Tour of Britain, and it was on that particular occasion it was Dylan Groenewegen who took the win. So some special names, and this is very, very fast and running well. The Tekkers rider there took a lot of pace into that first corner.
Well, it just shows how much speed you can take into these corners, and we were talking about that bottom corner. You can carry so much speed through the hairpin, but if you're sort of 20, 25 places back, the efforts and the accelerations you're having to make at this point, as we see Charlotte Broughton of Vaywall O'Shea really wanting to force the pace and string things out here.
And she certainly has. There's a couple of riders already just with a couple of little gaps. Drops Lecole also represented in 4th place, where we're lapping. Well, that was a very, very rapid opening lap. Remember, 1,200 metres round, 1 hour of racing, and then 5 laps on top of that. And already this field spread over around 100 metres. But look at the defending champion. We're just getting lap number 1 underway, and Jo Tindley already in 2nd position, having a little look round. She looks very, very composed early on and has gone on the left-hand side. This is a bold move so early in the race, 1 minute and 30 of racing, Hannah, and she's already opening up the afterburners.
She is, and she just saw that moment where there was a gap opening up behind her as they came out of that hairpin, and she took no time but to think, let's try and string things out, let's go early. But surely, you know, last year when you see the effort that she made and how early she went in the race, people would have been acute to this move, knowing just how strong and capable Jo Tindley is.
Well, it's Wahoo Lecole being forced to chase it. She's opened up just around 1.5 seconds, 2 seconds. Just shows how strong she is. I don't know if this was in the plan, but sometimes, Hannah, as you well know, and I think it's worth mentioning early on, you were photo finished for 4th place in the Circuit Race Championships a few years ago. You know what it's like to race at this level. But would that that been in the plan to go so early against such a good field?
Well, I think on the first lap, perhaps not. You know, you want to try and ride into things at least in the first sort of 5-10 minutes. But when you're in the race, and Jo is a prime example to have that race instinct. And if she knows she can feel the race, and she can feel that perhaps now's the time to go. Because if you take a look at this shot from the bottom corner, just how strung out things are, and the gaps are starting to open up. And as soon as that elastic snaps, there's going to be plenty of riders who are unable to ever get back on terms here. And you know, even in the sort of the top 20 riders, you start to see 1, 2, 3 bike lengths open up here, Matt.
Yeah, we'll just look at the gap here. Look at how much speed the riders who are still coming round that dog leg here. Also hot dog. Is it dog leg? Is it hot dog? Maybe we'll come to a general consensus of what to call that top corner. But it's certainly wreaking havoc with this race. But that little foray off the front, it's all come back together. Wahula Cole well represented. So we're lapping, thanks for putting the clock on, at approximately 1 minute and 34 seconds. So very, very quick indeed. And this field already 2 laps into this race is starting to fracture, with riders struggling to stay in contact with the ferocious pace that's been set.
You see there's a few riders, the teammates of Jo Tindley, just struggling off the back there. Looked like one of those riders, Amy Gornall, just tailing off there. But we saw last year how strong she was, that she took her time, took 10-15 minutes to get into the race, and then she got herself back into the race. So Gornall, bide your time, be patient, and yeah, you can certainly get yourself back in.
Well, this is Sammy Stewart on the front now for Cams Basso, that very distinctive kit, driving hard on the front. So Sammy Stewart is on the front, she's driving hard. And just behind is a teammate of the defending champion. So we talked about this before, cannot win these races alone. You do need to have riders around you watching these moves. Sammy Stewart really pressing on and really fracturing this field. A couple of riders already have lost contact completely.
Another rider who's been a real revelation this summer in circuit races and the Tour Series. She took some brilliant results, an individual victory. She was up there, many podium finishes, and then she got a contract with this UCI Continental team in Cams Basso, so a mid-season transfer for the rider who's on the front here, and she's gone from strength to strength. Her first ever UCI road race was the Women's Tour, only a few weeks after signing for Cams Basso.
Well, that's just shows how she looks great. Just look at the composure that she has, the amount of power she's clearly been able to put through the bike, continuing to string this field out. Clearly Cams Basso have a bit of a plan, happy to use a little bit of resource on the front, as are the team of Pro Noctis Rota. Another little launch off the front, but that move is marked. This field continuing to thin out as we head on to the second part of the circuit. Very, very high speeds here, but as you can see, it's an interesting circuit, this one, Hannah, isn't it? There's some really tight corners. You've got that little chicane, and there is Lucy Elmore, Sophie Langford, Jo Tindley not too far away, Emma Jeffers, you talked about her before, her brother will be racing later on in the men's race, and Kate Richardson. They are first 5 leaders, and the pace exceptionally high here, Hannah.
It is, you can just see Emma Jeffers there in that navy blue kit, but the pace that these riders are setting, and I think for some of these riders, they're keen to push it on the front. You wouldn't want to stay too long on the front because you want to try and also save yourself for the back end of the race. But in this position, the positioning is so critical and it is so fast that, you can see everyone fighting to get into that lower corner there. Jo Tindley, perfect line coming round there in the red jersey.
Yeah, she takes a little glance over her shoulder. As you say, being the first rider through, that enables you to pick that line. She's not only super strong on, if you want to be a circuit race champion of your country, you have to be skillful. You have to be very, very technically adept as well. She's doing a great job so far. And you just got the clock on the last one. Was that another 1:35 approximately? But Tindley still on the front on the left-hand side, happy to set the pace, but it's just knocked things off a little bit. Josie Nelson isn't too far away either, an exceptionally gifted rider from Team Co-op High-Tech. She's not too far away, and that is the elapsed time so far. So starting to bunch across the road, just our first indication of riders maybe just catching a bit of a breath after a very, very quick start.
It does lend itself to those riders who've been distant. You can just see in the background there some riders getting back in, and as you say, Matt, taking a moment just to rest, recover, assess the situation, and you can see so many riders getting themselves back. You can just see one of the riders moving up on the left-hand side from Cam's Basso, just trying to gather herself, and prime opportunity that if you did find yourself out of position earlier on, this is almost your second life to try and change things, turn the race around and get yourself back up towards the front.
That was generally the way that I rode circuit races in Criterium, Hannah. I always started off like a bit of a diesel. I always hoped and prayed that they would slow down after a couple of laps, and generally they do. There's always a little bit of a settling in period, isn't there, because you cannot keep up that ferocious pace. And although we've got a really high speed here, there are lots of opportunities on this course, but given the width of the circuit, to actually sit within the slipstream and the vacuum in the peloton. So last year it was essentially one long line. This circuit does lend itself, although it's a hard technical circuit, if you're smart you can rest in the wheels relatively well.
If you're able to surf those wheels around you and constantly at the right moments just pick the right lines, you could find yourself never actually touching the front but always being within sort of that top 5, top 6, and as you say, using that vacuum, using that slipstream of the other riders around you, and consequently you're being more efficient, you're saving the energy, and towards the back end of the race when everyone else is starting to fatigue and tire, you've got that upper hand.
Well, this is Beth Morrow on the front from Cam's Basso. Takes a little bit of a glance. Did I notice maybe a little bit of a flick of the elbow? One of her teammates just coming through the inside there with the fluorescent socks on. Joe Tindley in the centre there in the red. A couple of riders there from L'École Wahoo also there. That's Flora Perkins and Danny King. But yeah, this is bunched up a lot more, but another acceleration on the front. And that's that little turn into the back straight, ever so slightly downhill there. You can just see hardly much elevation at all on the circuit. You can just see it drops off slightly here, and then you can just see right the way back this long bunch spread over about 20 or 30 seconds. So about 10 minutes or so into the racing, heading back up this back straight. Doesn't take very long at all. We're lapping in around 1 minute and 35 seconds in the shadow of McClelland's Castle.
Speaking of the sort of elevation drop, there isn't so much to speak about, but you can just see from this camera angle the finish line, going up to the finish line, is ever such a slight incline, 1-2%, nothing so much to speak about, but it's certainly something where timing is going to be critical. Gear selection, it will be critical coming out of that bottom corner, and when you think of how many accelerations and efforts you're going to make lap upon lap, they all start to build up come the end of the hour plus 5 laps.
Yeah, the more we've started to study this circuit, this is Kate Richardson from the Albert development team in the blue, really turning the screw. Samantha Fawcett is just behind her from Spectral Wiggle. Then we have Beth Morrow and Jessica Finney, both of Cam's Basso. And the two Cam's Basso riders there in third and fourth position. And it's Eleanor King and Flora Perkins there from L'École Wahoo in that rather fetching. You always get their team kits completely dialed to Wahoo L'École, don't they? They really do. That baby blue and pink kit of theirs. But as you say, it's just gently undulating. There are several gentle rises and falls, and it did give us that shot that we saw before. It just dropped down, but then the last 50 metres did ever so slightly pick up, didn't it?
It did, and as I say, this is where the gear selection is critical, knowing where to sort of push on the pedals at moments on the course where you can get a moment of respite here, because it is so important. You can't be keeping the chain tight for the hour and 5. Wherever possible, just try and take a moment to take a breather, and you can see coming out of that right-hand bend, it's ever so slightly downhill. You can carry a lot of speed there.
Yeah, they're really carrying a lot of pace. Great bit of cornering here from Richardson. She spent that entire lap on the front, did a little bit of 50 pence there. There's Katie Richardson, Samantha Fawcett. So essentially that last lap, we've kept pretty much exactly the same formation. So Richardson happy to take them through 1,200 metres on at the front. A couple of other little fishes in the group there. Often it doesn't look like it, does it? But they're really moving quickly. And the worst place to be in a circuit race or a criterium is near the back. You get that whiplash effect. If you're not on a good day, you're constantly fighting, constantly chasing, aren't you?
You always feel like you're on the back foot. You always feel like you're closing the gaps, and once you start to get a good position, or you're just starting to move up, you've got yourself latched onto the back of the group, there's another acceleration and you find yourself out of place again, and consequently you do end up using a lot more energy than we've seen. You know, Kate Richardson doing a big turn on the front. We also saw Jo Tindley doing quite the same, and you know, they're keeping a more linear effort. You're keeping that effort in more linear. The heart rate isn't spiking just as much. Those accelerations, you're not doing as many accelerations per lap. But Kate Richardson, really a bright future ahead of her. A brilliant pursuiter on the track, and really a strong talent coming through Scottish cycling.
Indeed, that was great to see some of these younger riders coming through. There are a few little puddles on this circuit. Thank goodness the rain isn't falling at the moment. You see Samantha Fawcett there on the right hand side. It's Eleanor King on the left hand side there for Wiggle with that, sorry, not for Wiggle, for Wahoo Lacole with that blue helmet. Looks like she's going to be taking it into this corner. Actually it isn't. So another rider just rolling through there on the brakes. Jo Tindley being forced a little bit wide there, and this is a big acceleration here, carrying a lot of pace into that corner. It's a good place to go if you can, though, isn't it? If you've got a really strong kick, exploiting the momentum you get through that corner is often a good place to go, even if you're on the front. Especially
if you find a couple of riders back perhaps are starting to really suffer and that elastic starts to snap, a few bike lengths start to open up, and Charlotte Broughton, the rider who was very eager to take things up early on for AWOL O'Shea with Jo Tindley, you know, she's had 10 minutes just to recover, sit in the wheels before she makes another move, another effort to try and break things up here.
Yeah, Jo Tindley of Pro Noctis there in second place. I think the furthest back she's dropped that I've seen so far in this British Circuit Race Championships for 2022 is about 5th or 6th place. She's keeping an eye. She knows the riders that she respects, that she doesn't want to let go, and she does still have a couple of teammates around her, but with every lap this group is reducing. Remember, we had 56 starters, and the race itself 1 hour plus 5 laps of this circuit here in Kirkcudbright. I think I'm gradually getting this pronunciation dialed, Hannah. I'm pretty pleased with myself, to be perfectly honest with you. Let's have another look at the leaders again. Charlotte Broughton there, Jo Tindley, the defending champion, wearing of course #1, Samantha Fawcett, Emma Jeffers, Luna King there, and Beth Morrow. They're the first 6 riders. Rotating well, very quickly. We are well into another lap. You just see the repairs being done at the moment on McLellan's cars. A big crash! Oh, big crash into that corner. Wow, there's several riders that have come down there. That is not what we want to see at all. Well, Jo Tindley is still on the front there. But, well, that is very, very unfortunate. We know that quite often criterium racing, circuit racing can be pretty dangerous at times, but clearly there was a coming together. I do hope that the riders that have come down are okay. We'll get the medics on the scene and importantly get the circuit cleared. So the riders on the front clearly here just knocking this off. They know exactly what's happened behind it. Of course they could see because they went straight past it again. Let's hope everybody's okay. But that's, well, there are thrills and spills in circuit racing. It does happen from time to time.
It does, and we do wish and hope that everyone involved in that crash is okay. And unfortunately, looked like a touch of wheels coming out of that right-hand corner. It wasn't a hugely technical corner, but a lot of speed, a lot of pace being carried through there, Matt.
Well, number 63 there, that is Klinger Ingram of the Story Racing team. Also, she's got a teammate with her as well, Olivia French. It's never good to see at all. But they're up and they're walking. Certainly been a little bit the worse for wear, and as I echo the sentiments of Hannah there, let's hope that everybody is okay. That's something that we do not like to see, but that just shows that these riders are essentially on a little bit of a knife edge here, that tyre grip trade-off. You need that skill, but all it takes is a little bit of a lack of concentration, a touching of the wheels at these high speeds with that wet surface sometimes can be catastrophic. So, gone past the situation or the scene of that crash, and we've still got around 40 or so riders in at this front group. rider still round in the corner. The last rider in the group is from Teckers, actually. It looks like that crash, unfortunately, as is the very nature, has caused a severe split in the peloton.
You can just see there's several riders in that second group, and even here just being tailed off the back of the main bunch, who have already done a lot of chasing. Jenny Hull there from Teckers, who we mentioned before, the European Paracycling Tandem champion, with her partner Sophie Unwin, won that title only last month, and she finds herself on the wrong end of that split chasing, so a lot of energy being used here. But as I mentioned before, you know, just how important it is to keep chasing. You know, if you do find an opportunity that you can get back on. Amy Gornall, who found herself earlier on off the back, she's now at the front, so it is doable if you keep things going. There will be a moment of a lull in the race where you can get yourself back.
Yeah, another rider that was down, unfortunately a teammate of our defending champion from Pro Noctis Rota, Poppy Thompson, also down in that crash. And we also understand Beth Harley Jepson from the Jacqueline V. Levello team also down. So our wishes go out to those riders. Hopefully they're not too badly injured, but unfortunately they will take no further part in this championships. And we have a distinct split. As you can see there, you just mentioned it, 2 or 3 riders desperately trying to fight to get back into contention, using the momentum up that slight downhill section as we head back into this dog leg, which takes us through into the finish once more. They are lapping rapidly here.
They are, and you know, the pace hasn't really let off at all. We're still lapping at around 1 minute 35, 1 minute 36 here, and Gornall's still on the front, so she's done a full lap on the front here, Matt, really stringing things out. And I think there's several riders who have realised and now know, you know, that was a big wake-up call, that crash, and the importance to stay up towards the front, keep that position here in this criterium.
Yeah, we understand that also Gwenna Hughes from St Piran, we just saw the rider standing in the shop doorway, also one of the riders who was unfortunate enough to get caught behind that crash. But we do have a very, very strong group of riders. That 3 riders just off the back of that group, still trying to get back in contact. Amy Gornall, an exceptionally good rider from Lancashire, actually raced against her father back in the day, Mark Gornall, an exceptionally good rider. Up in the beautiful Lancashire Hills, the Trough of Bowland areas, that's where she comes from. But another big acceleration on the front here. Samantha Fawcett really forcing the pace there, isn't she? Eager to make this as hard as possible for everybody else. And quite often we do see this in criteriums, though, in these circuit races, where ordinarily in a road race, just riding hard on the front, you wouldn't do it. But here, it's slightly different, isn't it? It actually is, it's a good idea occasionally, if you're feeling good, to force people onto the back foot on a circuit like this.
In a circuit race, you're quite capable of staying up towards the front and really forcing that pace, keeping that power down and that speed, because it is only 1 hour plus 5 laps.
Exactly.
As you mentioned before, Max, you know, we're looking at around 1 hour 10, 1 hour 12 minutes for this race, and so it's a very, very different scenario to a road race where you might be racing 100, 120, 140 kilometers, where the emphasis on trying to save energy and use the slipstream of a lot of the riders around you and trying to be efficient. Whilst you still want to be efficient in a circuit race, the way in which you ride can be very, very different here.
Samantha Fawcett still riding on the front. She's got Emma Jeffers, number 40. GRC Interflora just behind her. Joe Tindley never too far away. Tindley in that red jersey has dropped back to around a 5th or 6th wheel here. Samantha Fawcett continues to be more than happy to ride in front. And quite often riding on the front, although you're using that little bit of extra energy, you're always in that good position, and you certainly will avoid any crashes. You can also pick your line, and on a circuit this wide as well, there are different lines to take in the corners as well, aren't there? And some riders will take different lines. It's noticeable in a city centre race, in a circuit race, especially as wide as this, that different riders will opt. There's an optimum cornering technique, of course, an optimum line, but quite often you see riders taking different ones, don't you?
You do, and you know, because it is so wide, you know, there's many riders who can also, if they do find themselves out of position late towards the corner, that they can gain a few positions, they can move up. And I think at least when it is wide like this, you're able to hold your position. There isn't such a fight like we saw last year, for example, where it was so narrow.
Well, this is this little group behind that hasn't managed to get in contact. That's Ariana Holland from the Albert Development Road team in the blue, trying to get back in contact. Bexy Dew also there as well, who's been distanced. And she was one of the, well, a very, very talented rider. But again, if you get caught the wrong side of a split, it almost looks like you can close this. But believe you me, as Joe Tindley forces the pace, shutting a gap of even 50 metres at these sorts of speeds is so, so hard.
Because you're already on your limit as well at this point, and especially when you found yourself on the back foot, you found yourself chasing, you're using a lot of energy to try and close that gap. And whilst you see in this front group there's plenty of attacks, moves, accelerations up towards the front, every time there is one of those accelerations, that group who is chasing behind is slightly distanced ever again. But you can see there's a few riders from the same team there, so if they can try and get themselves cohesive, get themselves together, start working together, they do have an opportunity to get back, but it is going to be a long concerted chase.
It certainly is. They've got around, it's looking like it's around 8-10 seconds now. There they are, just rounding that corner. And it's these opportunities, especially on a circuit like this, where you can see up in front what's happening. What you want to see is that group not in a long line. You want to see them spread across the road, and that's an indication that the pace has eased just a little bit. But as you said, what they need to work as is a complete unit, even riders from other teams, because they do have teammates in front. And it's certainly not over just yet, is it?
It's never over until we cross that finish line. And you'll see in the pits here on the left-hand side of your screen, there's the team managers, the sports directors, who will be giving information of what is that time gap. And I think it's roughly around 9 seconds to this group, and you can see one of the riders from the Alba Development Road team who's just pushing the pace on that chasing group. So there's still a lot of firepower in these riders. They're not giving up just yet.
They're certainly not. Well, we're around approaching a third of the way through this. This is the British National Circuit Race Championships for women, and another lap is done and dusted.
You can just see this rider coming across the line now from the Alba Development team. That's Beth Mckeever, a rider that we know very, very well.
Very strong.
Exceptionally strong. She races esports for the Movistar E team, and she's closing that gap. She can feel that she can bridge this gap, and she's going to do it, Matt.
Well, Beth Mckeever, if she gets across, she rode for the Cryo RDT and also for Movistar as well, didn't she? The esports team. So she is a very, very strong rider. And quite often you'll see a rider in a group like that detached working, but then you think, well, it's now or never. If I continue to work with this group, we're not going to get on. So she has made one concerted attack, as we see Sian Botley, unfortunately from the brother team, retiring from the race. But it does look as if Beth Mckeever has managed to get back on the group. As we look at her Bexy Dew, unfortunately, well, a chain has, the rear mech has been sheared off there. Again, that's probably, that's going to be due to a crash or just a rider riding into your back mech.
That could have been a consequence of that crash, and because the pits, if she's on the opposite side of the course, there's no laps out, let's not forget, for the riders here.
A good reminder, yeah. 25 minutes in. If anybody are thinking, what do you mean laps out? Well, historically in circuit races all over the world, in fact, although they're really, really popular in this country, up to a couple of years ago, or maybe 3 years ago, if you had a puncture or a crash, you could take a lap, get yourself to the pits, take a lap out, and then rejoin the race in the group that you were in when you had the mechanical. But now that has changed, and if you have a mechanical, puncture, whatever, you have to chase and get back in contact. And I'll be perfectly honest with you, I think the sport is better for it.
Absolutely, because we see that
people having a bit of fun with the rules a little bit in the past, let's be honest.
Yeah, to put it lightly. And as you say, for those who have a genuine crash problem mechanical, it is a real shame, because it's such a highlight of people's years.
It is
a national title. There's a national title on the line here at the National Circuit Race Championships, and it's a huge moment. It's a moment where riders really base their whole season around to peak, to have good form, and to come here with the goal of taking that gold medal.
Yep, gold, silver and bronze. 10 national champions jerseys to be awarded over the next couple of days. Well, 2 tonight, and we've got 4 on Sunday. We've got both the under-23 men's and women's, elite men's, and under-23 men's, elite women under-23s. And then we've already had some jerseys awarded over the last couple of days in the time trial championships. So it's a busy weekend 2 more jerseys to be awarded today, as it's a highlight of another crash here coming into this corner. Wow, that corner is wreaking havoc here. Thank goodness only one rider came down. They're carrying so much speed into that corner.
Dear me, this is really unfortunate. It looks like Frankie Hall from the Loughborough Lightning team. Really unfortunate, but they can carry so much speed through that left-hander that it almost swings them out. You can just see there.
Broken the barrier. She actually got her handlebars caught in the barrier there, but she's upright and she's just straightening her bar. She's got a bike change and she might be back. Well, it doesn't look like she's going to get back in contact with the bunch, but she is underway again. And up to speed very quickly, but well identified. But it just shows the bravery, the fortitude, the resilience of these riders. Lay it down at 50 k's an hour, bounce back up and get going again.
Incredible from Francesca Hall there, that she was so quick to react. Fortunately, she was okay, no injuries suffered. But also her mechanic there, straight out of the pits, running down with a spare bike, gave her a quick, smooth spare change. She's looking down. I'm not sure if she's got another problem here. This is a real shame for Francesca Hall.
I'm not too sure there. Maybe she's using caliper brakes. I'm not too sure exactly what's happened there. It is quite interesting there as we see the leading group now has swelled ever so slightly. Beth Mckeever as Hannah very, very deftly identified, punting across the gap from that chasing group, has got back in. Watch out for her. She is an exceptionally strong rider and of course comes from Scotland as well.
Racing on home soil, it will be really special, won't it, for Beth Mckeever, and I think a rider that she can't be underestimated in this circuit race national title, you know, for the title, because she's relatively new to the road side of things, of course, in the esports world, in the virtual world, racing in the ZRL and alike. That she's very, very well known. She's very prominent in that, and you know, wins very regularly. But I think here she will be underestimated, or she can't be underestimated, should I say, Matt? No,
we'll know her. That is for sure. It's another big attack. There was Lucy Elmore, the teammate of the defending champion, on the front there. Emma Jeffers, ever present, the tall, rangy rider in the blue. She's just dropped back to third wheel, but this is the second big attack by the defending champion. She prizes open just a little bit of a gap, but I think she's been shut down here. I think it's Josie Nelson who actually closes the gap here. So Josie Nelson, very talented rider indeed, riding for Team Co-op High-Tech, shuts the gap very quickly. So Nelson looking good, and she knows she cannot let a rider of the calibre of the defending champion Joe Tindley go clear, so shut that gap all on her own.
That's the other difference of road racing and racing in a circuit race, that whereas in a road race a 10-second gap is, I'd say relatively easy,
yeah.
Relatively easy to close. In a circuit race, it's a very, very different situation, that as soon as you see a rider who's of any threat, of any danger, it's important that you react to that move immediately, because it's going to be incredibly difficult to bring back. And you can see the Jocelyn fight into that right-hand corner. They know how much havoc that corner is playing, so wanting to take their own line, go into that corner with a clear run at it.
Yeah, they'll know that a couple of riders have come to grief. And as we get a little bit deeper into this race, it won't be too long before we are approaching half distance. Remember, if you have just joined us, this is the National Circuit Race Championships for women. 1 hour of this wonderful circuit, this exciting circuit. It's a little bit of everything on this one in Kirkcudbright, in beautiful Dumfries and Galloway. This old historic harbour town, very, very, for the first time hosting the British Championships. In fact, this is the first time we've had the British Championships in Scotland since 2013, and so far it's been a great championships. It's
been brilliant, hasn't it? And it's been such a terrific few days. The crowds have been terrific. The results of the time trial yesterday was fantastic. We saw, you know, Ethan Hayter take the national title. His brother took the under-23 time trial title. Joss Lawton, coming back from injury earlier in the season, taking the elite time trial championship, and Pfeiffer Georgie, who's been having a tremendous season, taking that under-23 time trial title yesterday.
Yeah, watch out for those riders in the coming days. They've got a day to put their feet up, maybe go for a nice cafe ride around the streets of Kirkcudbright. And then we have the elite road race for women and men on Sunday, incorporating, of course, the under-23 championships as well. So there's a little bit of a lull in proceedings now, around halfway through this race. And this is a little chase group, around 5 or 6 riders still fighting to get back in contact. They certainly won't give up here. As long as they're upright, they can see the bunch, they will have that little bit of relief. But if anything, Hannah, I think the pace is going to slowly, in these closing stages, or the last part of this race, should I say, only get quicker.
It will, but I think there potentially will be another lull for these riders, and I think having the front group in your sights, having that carrot to chase, having that motivation that you still want to pursue the chase is important. As we said before, it's not over until we cross the line with no time or laps left remaining. And Sophie Langford, who had just done a really long turn on the front there for the Alba Development Road team, another rider who is a very strong time trialist. She's a great pursuiter, and she's also got a good kick on her at the end of a race as well. She's got a real good turn of speed.
Well, they're the sort of attributes you need to excel in circuit races. A good kick. It's not just the explosivity that you need at the finish to get a good placing or indeed to win. You need that explosive ability in and out of these corners, because there's several, there's 6 corners on this circuit, the hardest of which, of course, comes on St Cuthbert Street. And with about 150 metres to go, that's a big attack on the inside there. One of the riders from Cams Basso accelerating through in a huge gear.
Wow, the speed that this rider took, that left-hander there, Emma Jeffers in the navy blue, the dark navy blue with number 40 on her back. She was quick to react to that move. She knew it was a big danger, and Emma Jeffers, she's been sitting very, very tightly. Again, another rider who's just been sitting in top 5, top 6, never really lost her position, but also always been straight onto moves without having to do too much work on the front. Too many accelerations, really keeping herself tight, and really a wise ride from this young rider. Yeah,
definitely. Well, this is Sammy Stewart on the front from Cams Basso, still on the front, and as you said, Jeffers looking very, very good. As you said, floating, or just floating beautifully, doing a little bit on the front, but not too much, keeping in the wheels, and another big attack from Jo Tindley. Gosh, she's got so much strength. Briefly dipping into the slipstream of the TV moto, and look at the devastation that is caused when she really turns on the power. The riders are struggling in her wake. She glances around to check the damage. She's dragged 4 riders clear, including Jeffers, but nobody willing to work with her just yet. A little bit of a flick of the elbow, but everybody else is thinking, well, I just want to recover first.
You see the difference in Jo Tindley's riding style, the gear that she's in. She's got a much higher cadence to the likes of Sammy Stewart, who's in the fluorescent and red jersey, perhaps, of Cams Basso. And you saw that on that bottom corner, going the hairpin into the finish. Sammy Stewart went in with a very big gear, and on the exit of that corner, having to really lever those the pedals, lever the gear, whereas Tindley, smaller gear, was able to come out, get leg speed back up, get on top of that gear, click through the gears, and was right up to speed.
We talk about the attributes of a rider that excels at this sort of racing, and also getting the gearing right. You can be strong, but if you use too big a gear accelerating out of a corner, it lacks that little bit of explosivity, and sometimes almost telegraphs the move, doesn't it? So gear selection and knowing your strengths and weaknesses, but gear selection on a circuit like this, especially coming into the last lap, the riders that are going to want to win this one will be thinking about the gearing they're going to be using now, won't they?
They will be, and the beauty of a circuit race, and for those riders who have that experience, have that knowledge, have learned over years and years of riding, is taking a look at lap upon lap. How many times have you seen this finish lap? Where do you need to be going into those final few laps? Where do you want to position yourself? What kind of gear do you need to come out of that bottom corner to really accelerate? At which point do you think the move might start to go? Will it be from the previous right-hand corner, which we have seen that riders are more than capable of holding that for that last 300 meters, and holding that position more than capable, because once you get into that bottom corner, you've got complete control of the surroundings of you.
No, you certainly have. Well, this is Jenny Hall of the Techers team on the front. Again, a team, a different sort of team. They really, really are. They excel in giving riders different opportunities. They ride a lot of criteriums. They ride off-road as well. An exceptionally interesting team who do things just a little bit differently, and the man all behind that team, Alec Briggs, will be riding the men's race later on. It really is a charismatic figure, and it's a really interesting team, isn't it? Really diverse in relation to the team's ambitions and attitudes.
It is. It's such a terrific, fun team as well. The importance of enjoying yourself, and those results will come whilst training hard, putting all the work in, but enjoying the time whilst you're racing, you're training. And as you say, Matt, they're doing criteriums, the circuit races, the road races, mountain biking, downhill. They've got junior team. They've got so many different different types of riders within their roster. It's terrific.
It certainly is. Another lap nearly done. Jo Tindley still on the front. She has that teammate with her here. And again, there's another big acceleration here. So this again is Josie Nelson. Well, sorry, it's not Josie Nelson. Josie Nelson is in second position there in that light blue kit. And what do we have now? Probably around 25 riders, maybe 30, left in contention in the National Circuit Race Championships for women here in beautiful Kukubri. I do like this circuit. In the shadows, a little bit of everything, isn't there? And it's there's something for everybody. There's also a lot of opportunities to move up on a circuit like this. Quite often we do see riders sometimes criticising the very narrow, twisty circuits where your race can be over within a couple of laps. But this circuit, I think, offers up opportunities for everybody.
It does, and it does. And this is the beauty of this this circuit, that if you do find yourself on the back foot, or you're caught behind one of the crashes, or someone who's had a mechanical, or perhaps you've just had a bad start, we have seen that riders have been able to get themselves back in and almost be given that sort of second chance in the race. We saw, I'll mention it again, Amy Gornall, one of those riders who found herself sort of 8-10 seconds off the back, having to close that big gap, and there was a lull in the race. She's got herself back in, and she's taken that second opportunity with both hands. She's never been too far away from the front, and doing such a terrific job for her team in Pro Noctis Rotor Red Chili bikes.
So Amy Gornall for Pro Noctis leads them through. We've had a couple of crashes, about 3 crashes just on the corner we've just gone round. Thankfully, on this occasion, everybody's staying upright. We're well into the second half of this race now. There's another big attack, and the riders took that inside line there. Slightly unorthodox, but it's an effective one. And that again is Jeffers. Jeffers moves to the front. I think she wanted to try and prise open a little bit of the gap there, but then didn't continue with the move. But a lot of the riders that you would have imagined who would have been there at the end are in this group. I think all of the pre-race favourites, by 1 or 2 who were caught in this crash, are still in this front group of 30 or so riders. So into the second half of the National Circuit Race Championships for women. The defending champion Jo Tindley safely ensconced in this group. Amy Gornall, her teammate, is also there. Josie Nelson from Team Co-op in the navy blue, also in the mix as well. And we're just looking at the finishing straight, and one of the little groups off the back that were caught behind that split that happened around 15 minutes ago, but they are still fighting gamely, and they certainly will not give up without a big fight. That is for certain. So Hannah, this circuit, comparing it to last year, okay, we're now in approximately coming into the final third of this race. Already 40 minutes of racing under the wheels of these riders. We had 56 starters, but I think given the width of the road, psychologically, it's very different than attacking on a narrow, twisty circuit where you're out of sight and out of mind. I think it's harder to go clear on a circuit like this.
We've seen several attacks from various different riders, various different teams, and none of them have been successful yet, because they've always managed to get on top of that gear, get on top of the attacks, and it just hasn't split into smaller groups like we might have thought from when we saw the opening lap, of just how aggressive the riders were and attentive they were to try and break things up. But as you say, the group here at the front, Matt, because of the wide nature of the course, it does lend itself that riders, even if you do find yourself towards the back, you can move up, and especially now we've only got around 20 riders in this front group, making it much easier to sort of find your position, to move up, to get back towards the front.
Yep, good bit of work there for Amy Gornall. She's done a lot of work so far clearly working for Joe Tindley, just keeping that pace nice and high to deter any attacks. And also, if you keep the pace high on the front, it doesn't just deter attacks. What it does do is stop this bunching up. So it enables riders to hold position a lot easier. That's why we see this pace being kept high at the front. But Gornall doing a cracking job at the moment. As we see another acceleration on the front. I think I've tried to, there's around 25 riders in this front group now.
I think as well for some of these riders, they're quite eager to keep the pace high because they'll know some riders are really starting to suffer now. And this is the real biting point in the race, where if you keep that pace high and there's a few riders who are really starting to suffer, if they you lose a couple more riders from that group, it works to your advantage if you're feeling quite good. And psychologically as well plays a huge part if you feel like you're in control of the race and there's other riders who are starting to think, I just wish we'd have a couple of laps where we ease off the pace here. But for those riders who are well in control, Charlotte Broughton, one of those riders, just taking that left-hand bend for that left-hand corner for Awol O'Shea, Joe Tindley, Emma Jeffers, those riders, you see how calm and composed they are. Yeah,
Broughton, one of the riders here, is happy to go to the front and do a little bit of the pace, making lots of looking around just to see which riders, just to get a sense of how the other riders are doing as well. I mean, there might not be any direct communication, a little bit of communication, of course, between teammates, but as you said, fatigue, although it's only a relatively short, explosive race, it's high intensity, and fatigue now will play its part. All of those repeated accelerations out of the corners, shutting those gaps, will start to tell. And although it's just over an hour and 10, hour and 12 minutes, it's still an endurance sport, but a higher intensity, so legs will be beginning to burn now.
They will, and it's for those riders who are in good form, who've come into this championship with good form, who are able to recover quickly, who you're doing the training. It's almost a little bit like a points race on the track where you've got those constant accelerations, you might ease off, and then you got those higher intensities again. So those riders who are able and capable of dealing with those high intensities, those high accelerations, and able to make upwards of 50, 60 accelerations in this hour and plus 5 laps, if not more.
Well, this is Isabel Darville who's just clipped off the front here. Great little move. I think it is Darville who's going clear there. It was Gornall who let her teammate go, and this is going to force the other riders on to the back foot here. So good little move, but immediately Jeffers straight on to the wheel there. She knows that she doesn't want to let any of these riders from that team go, and it is indeed that rider that I just said who's on the front here. So good little acceleration. Now, just looking at the riders that we have in this group, thinking about the winner last year, Joe Tindley, does she have a kick? Will she fear a couple of riders in this group? Will she want to go clear, or will she be confident to win this from group? What are your thoughts? I know you can't. Well, I'm asking you to get your crystal ball out, really, Hannah, but what are your thoughts on Tindley as a sprinter rather than a solo rider?
For me, Joe Tindley has a great kick, but I wouldn't say she's one of the strongest sprinters in this group.
Okay.
The likes of Emma Jeffers, who you can see in the navy blue, just taking a look over her right-hand shoulder, is a real revelation. She's had a brilliant season of circuit racing this summer. She's got a great kick on her, a great sprint, so one you can never underestimate. Also, Beth Mckeever has a terrific kick on her at the finish. So I think for me, if Tindley is wanting to try and defend this title, as we see one of her teammates, Amy Gornall, go off the front here and just open up a slight gap here, I think she's going to have to really take it up quite early, sort of make sure that she has that control going into that bottom corner, and make sure that she gets that bottom corner just right if she isn't going to go earlier than just on that final corner.
Yeah, it's going to be a little bit of a nervous last couple of laps if Tindley can't get clear, but what she has around her are some very, very good teammates. Lucy Elmore has just dropped back to about 5th or 6th wheel. The rider on the front who's done a lot of work so far, Amy Gornall. And now look, Tindley straight through. See the way that she whipped the bike around into that corner. Just another demonstration, not just of her strength, but of her skill as a rider as well, and that's what you need on a circuit like this. And another big attack on the side on the left by Lucy Elmore. It's clearly a plan. They want to keep this pace high, and they want to force the other teams to chase. You
can see just how in control and how well they ride as a unit, this team in red of Pro Noctis Rotor Red Chili bikes, that they are so synonymous with each other. and so well drilled that you saw Tindley there look over her shoulder. It's forcing the other teams of Le Colloir, who also Alba Development Road team, to do the chasing, Cams Basso as well. So they have to make that immediate acceleration, and meanwhile Tindley can sit back, oversee what's going on in front of her, make sure that she's still patrolling the other riders. But they are always, with the strength in numbers, we saw this last year, they always had a rider on the front foot, always trying to push the pace and really in control.
And they're not making it easy for the rest. Rather than just sit on the front and riding, they're attacking and forcing everybody to chase as Tindley goes on the left-hand side. Elmore is caught. She was followed by Eleanor King of Le Colloir, who are now the defending champion, goes again. A big attack here. This is that little downhill stretch back in to the finishing straight. This is St Cuthbert Street. Big acceleration by the defending champion. 47 minutes of racing done. In 13 minutes time, we will get the bell commencing. 5 laps to go. Hannah, things are holding up nicely, but Tindley is impatient and clearly wants to go clear.
Wow, and you just saw that she used every inch of the road there to carry as much speed as possible. And you can see how laboured the riders towards the back end of this group are. You can start to see from their body language just how difficult this race is in coming and making that acceleration out of that bottom corner. There's some very tired legs out there, Matt.
There certainly is. Well, a big acceleration by Tindley, but she's knocked it off straight away. The rider who shut her down was Josie Nelson from Team Co-op High Tech. She's just on the right-hand side. Nelson just taking it through what? Boy, they really have knocked it off. Bit of a staccato here. That certainly allowed a couple of other riders who are in difficulty after that stinging acceleration by the rider wearing a number 1. So it is, as you were, and this is probably the slowest they've gone. It's you talked about, you expected a little bit of a lull later on, but this is almost getting themselves ready for the final stages of this race, and we do see the frequency of the racing change, especially when there's only been probably 6 or 7 riders willing to go on the attack. They cannot keep on doing it. There's a few riders here who'll be more than happy for the pace to be eased just slightly.
There certainly will, Matt, and there will be some of those riders who, they just want a couple of laps just to regather themselves, just to get a moment of recovery and respite here in this race, and just to really reassess what's going on. We've had several attacks and counter-attacks there from the team in red, who are trying to help the defending champion Joe Tindley try and take that title again for 2022. But there'll be certainly some of the riders who will be glad that everything's all back together, and it gives that other opportunity for some of the riders that we haven't seen so far. This is Robin Clay of the Otley CC who's taken things up. So another rider who's ridden this race very, very well, very savvy. Tactically has been fantastic because we haven't seen her at all here. She's just been biding her time, very, very patient. As we see, Matt, as we go through here, crossing off another lap, another move here from Tindley.
Well, it's Josie Nelson that follows her. Tindley goes again. So quick and real fluid lead speed there, cornering. She looks around, but she will see Josie Nelson has shut her down again. In fact, I think I've lost count of how many attacks that the defending champion has made. She's just got to be a little bit careful that nobody goes straight over the top. But she's confident. She's always looking around, and you need to on a circuit like this. You need to look around just to check at the damage behind and see the situation, but it is as you were again.
At some point I do feel like there's going to be a snap of the elastic, but one thing that Joe Tindley, by doing that move, at that point 3 of her teammates were on sort of that wrong end of a potential split towards the back end of the group, and if she had caused a split, it would have meant that she is isolated, she is alone here in this group, and she doesn't have any teammates to try and help her. Or at least, whether the tactic, the plan is to go all in for Joe, or the plan is that everyone has that opportunity. Everyone has had that opportunity to attack and to try and split things up in this race and try and go for that win.
Coming into Cuthbert Street again, this is Sammy Stewart of Cams Basso. She takes them round that corner. All the riders now getting that line dialed perfectly. And immediately onto the power into the finishing straight, and the rider on her wheel is Joe Tindley. I think the furthest back she's been is about 7th or 8th, but as you said, there's clearly here, Hannah, some riders starting to struggle. You can see the body language starting to change, the shoulders starting to rock under the pressure.
Yeah, one of the riders there from the Spectre Wiggle presented by Vitus really starting to struggle with the pace there. You can see their head starting to bob, the shoulders rocking and rolling, and there is some riders where the intensity of this race is becoming too much, and it's almost like all it takes is another 1 or 2 attacks from this group and we will see a smaller group form.
Fascinating stuff here. Real tactical play here. So much aggression being showed by several riders. The most aggressive rider so far as she is rounding that corner. Number 1 on the back in that red kit is Jo Tindley. And a teammate attacks again on the left-hand side. This is the 3rd or 4th attack from one of her teammates. I think this is Lucy Elmore who's going clear now. Or is it... no, it's not Lucy Elmore. It is Amy Gornall. Another big attack by Gornall. But again, Jeffers shuts her down immediately. This is about keeping this pace as high as possible, but as a unit, as you said, this team are working very, very well. Still around 30 riders left in the field as we go through the pits, down back into Cuthbert Street and up it again. I estimate we've probably got around 3 or 4 laps before we actually get the bell, and then we'll get 5 laps to go. That's almost a lap board. Come on. Will be lifted into the circuit. So yeah, well, maybe 7 laps to go exactly, roughly the speed they're going at with my very rudimentary mathematics. But Amy Gornall again accelerating on the front. She's done a superb ride so far tonight.
She has been so impressive, Amy Gornall, this rider on the front. Comes from the northwest of England, and she has been such a brilliant asset to the team. She's been a real key player, you know, race after race after race, and the selflessness in which she races is impeccable, and you need riders on your team like Amy Gornall. You know, she's highly experienced. Her parents both also used to race as well, were very, very talented former professionals. I think her mum also rode back in the 80s in the what was the Tour de France Feminin. So you know, that the experience within the family, and yeah, cycling running through the genes.
Well, that's the black flag there. That's the group that were about to be lapped. They've been now pulled out of the circuit because we're coming into the final stages of the race now. It won't be long before they've raced an hour, and they will have 5 more laps to go, which should take us to around 1 hour and 12 minutes of racing. So 7 minutes to go, and it's still Amy Gornall on the front. As you said, she comes from really high quality cycling stock. In fact, her dad, Mark Gornall, is an Olympian. Back in the day, back in the late 1980s, an exceptionally gifted rider, as well as a farmer as well. So Sue and Mark Gornall. I remember, quick story from back in the day, I think it was back in 1990, went to their house and stayed the night before a big Star Trophy race, and I had milk on my cornflakes, and it was straight from a cow's udder. There we go.
Always love the Matt Stevens stories. Brilliant.
Straight away.
Brilliant.
Sorry about that, had to bring that. There we go, but that's a Gornall story for you as Jeffers hits the front now. She looks around, swings over to the right-hand side, and she'll see that there are only around 25 riders left in this leading group. It won't be long before we get the lap board taken out, and we will have 5 laps to go. So good bit of riding there by Jeffers. As you said before, Hannah, she's floated around perfectly at the front.
You can just see how in control Emma Jeffers is in that navy blue kit there on the left-hand side of the screen with the blue shoes. And yeah, for Jeffers, so in control. She's so aware of what's going on, constantly looking over her shoulder to see what's going on. And now another move from Amy Gornall on the left-hand side here. How many moves has Amy Gornall done here? This is incredible stuff from the rider from the northwest of England. And the first time that we've really started to see daylight. You see the flick of the elbow there from one of the riders from Spectre Wiggle, powered by Vitus, and they're wanting to try and force another rider to come through and close this gap. But for Gornall, full flight here. She's
absolutely flying here. Looks great on the drops, and it is indeed Samantha Fawcett from Spectre Wiggle, who was very active in the early stages, been quiet the mid part of the race, but she is the rider that's been forced to bring back an absolutely flying Gornall. And for me, she's been the woman of the match today so far, to be honest with you, as well as the attacking, tenacious spirit of Jo Tindley. As a teammate, you want somebody this strong this experience that can ride at the front and can take a lot of this punishment as well. The more attacks he does like this, the more it's going to hurt her, but of course it's going to hurt the rest of the field as well as they round that corner. This is St Cuthbert Street, and very shortly, well, there's a big attack on the left-hand side from one of the riders from La Col Wahoo. It's Flora Perkins. That's the first time we've seen Flora Perkins attack, and that was a really crisp manoeuvre.
It was coming out of that corner, getting on top of that gear, big acceleration from the rider of La Col Wahoo, takes a look over her shoulder, and great timing because she also has her teammate in Eleanor King close by as well. So the Flora Perkins, she started to string things out. We're starting to see a few bike lengths, a few gaps here and there open up in this group, and as you see the heads of some of these riders start to dip and the shoulders rocking and rolling, this is a really decisive moment in this race here.
Well, look at the way this is strung out now. Some big gaps opening up, little gaps opening between these riders. That big acceleration. That's the first time we've seen one of the riders from La Col Wahoo attack, and that was a big one because this group has been torn asunder. 57 minutes of racing done, only 3 minutes to go before we see 5 laps to go. We're coming into the closing stages of this British Championships. It's been an aggressive race. It's been a war of attrition, really, as riders go out of the back in the shadow of McClelland's Castle. And we have another attack on the right-hand side by number 4, Lucy Elmore of Pro Noctis, the teammate of the defending champion. Well, she's cornering like a dream, absolutely dialed, cornering on rails back into St Cuthbert Street. Again, she's done a superb race and she's opened up a bit of daylight here.
This is brilliant here from Pro Noctis Rotor Red Chili Bikes, that they've constantly been attacking, counter-attacking, really putting themselves on the front foot and really making sure that when they do attack, it's at the point where some riders are really starting to suffer from that fatigue, from the intensity and lots of accelerations in this National Circuit Race Championships. And for this team, they always have strength in numbers up towards the front, and with the likes of Jo Tindley, Amy Gornall, also Lucy Elmore and Isabel Darville, who has been in such brilliant form, was racing it a couple of weeks ago in Belgium, took a second place in a Kermesse out there. So for Isabel Darville, she can come into this race with so much confidence and motivation, knowing that the form is good, that she has been able to race well coming into this championship.
Well, that's one of the fastest laps we've had so far. That last lap through there, you could see the way they were strung out from the attack from the lap before. That was 1:33, that last lap. So that's one of the fastest laps we've had, 58 minutes and counting. So we'll get confirmation. It's the commissaires' decision. There we go, 5 laps to go. You can just see going through the pits. Next time through will be 5 laps to go. So they've got a lap and a quarter coming back into St Cuthbert Street. That was the signal then from the pit area. 5 laps to go. This is thrilling stuff. Still nothing to tell between these riders at all. Clearly a lot of riders holding back. A lot of riders have already shown their colours, haven't they? They
have, and we've seen multiple riders, show what they're capable of. Also, what their form is like. As we see another move here from Lucy Elmore. She took 3rd in round 1 of the Tour Series at the start of May. So we know she's in very good form. And for Lucy Elmore, she was in that breakaway. She's a strong rider. But for Elmore, this is her 5th, 6th attack of this championship.
We've got another attack here from Flora Perkins again. This is the 2nd attack from the rider from La Col Wahoo. She's gone clear. She's taken with her Josie Nelson of High Tech in the blue, and also Emma Jeffers on her wheel. It's the first time we've seen the team of Pro Noctis on the back foot ever so slightly, but Jo Tindley sews it back together and straight over the top. Seated move here from Tindley. Look at that acceleration. Cuts the apex of that corner beautifully, like she's a MotoGP rider. She's accelerating hard here. Remember, we're in the last 5 laps of the British Championships now.
You can see how much speed Jo Tindley is able to carry through these corners, and I think at some point, if this pace continues from the likes of Flora Perkins, Jo Tindley, Emma Jeffers, if they do take things up, there is going to be a split in this group, because you can see in the group, the very reduced group, snaking its way down past the pits as the team managers, the sports directors, they signal again 4 laps to go, just to make sure that everyone's aware, just in case you don't see the lap board on the finish line.
It's pretty handy for us as well, I must admit. I'll take that. And they bunch all together, coming down into St Cuthbert Street. 4 laps to go, and next time through It is Nicole Wahoo on the front. Sorry, it's Josie Nelson. Sorry, Lucia, the defending champion. Jo Tindley rounds that corner like she has so many times before. Onto her left shoulder, Emma Jeffers in the navy blue. The pace slackens off ever so slightly. This could open the door for an attack. We have 4 laps to go. So 4 laps to go, Hannah. We've got about 25 riders left in the bunch, and it's still all together. Samantha Fawcett now hits the front.
Spectra Wiggle, presented by Vitus, have been very prominent towards the back end of this race with Samantha Fawcett and her teammate. You can just see in those black jerseys with the white helmets on, and for them taking that opportunity to come towards the front of this group, take a look around, see what's going on, and be in control. When you see that sort of 3.5 laps to go at this point, that the positioning is key, and the nerves will really start to run through these riders of how are they going to try and win this national title, this national circuit race championship.
Well, in about 5 or 6 minutes time we will know the answer. It's been a brilliant race so far. It's been full of intrigue. We've had a couple of crashes, unfortunately. We've had numerous attacks by the defending champion and other riders too, but we have had no definitive attack that has gone clear. The big question remains, what has Jo Tindley got in the tank? Will she be nervous of the other riders around her, because there's some very explosive competitors amongst this group of 25 riders heading ever closer to the finish. We wend our way through St Cuthbert Street 3 more times before the finish now. Again in the shadow of the beautiful ruins of McClelland's Castle. We are in Kirkcudbright, and shortly we will know who'll be crowned the National Circuit Race Champion for women of Great Britain. Difficult to pick it, but Tindley in second place. In the finishing straight once more, just coming through now with 3 laps to go, and it's the team of Pro Noctis who take things up at the front. Amy Gornall powers through now. 3 laps to go. The defending champion Jo Tindley in second place, Emma Jeffers in third.
You can just see some signalling there from Samantha Fawcett, a Spectra Wiggle, that she's just waving her hand. It's almost like she's waving. She wants her teammates to gather up towards the front. Now's the opportunity that we need to start to move up towards the front of this group, because as the laps count down, the importance of being up towards the front and that positioning in this group is now, so vital. You can see the 2 riders just having a chat sort of mid-pack there in the black jerseys.
Well, this is some selfless riding here being done by the Pro Noctis rider Amy Gornall. She's got her teammate and defending champion on her wheel. She's been one of the most aggressive riders. She's actually been clear on several occasions, but nobody's opened up more than just a handful of seconds, maybe just 2 or 3 seconds, and I think that's only been Jo Tindley. This circuit proving very difficult to break the elastic. We do have an elite group of riders though that are coming through into the finish next time through, as the gentleman on the left hand side in the tracksuit is indicating. It'll be 2 laps to go into St Cuthbert Street for the penultimate time. It is Amy Gornall of Pro Noctis Rota Red Chili Bikes, presented by Heidi Kleidromp, to give the full name of that team. This is the penultimate time. We'll hit this dogleg. Who's going to take it first? It is the rider from Cams Abasso that takes things through there. That's Sammy Stewart winding things up again. So coming up now to 2 laps to go. Sammy Stewart, she's been a big aggressor earlier on, happy to take them through. Emma Jeffers in the navy blue sits in second position. 2 laps to go now. Hannah, 2 laps to go. I'm not going to ask you to predict or get out your crystal ball who, if anybody, can break the elastic. It looks to me, unless something special happens, that it could be a big bunch sprint.
The way that we start to see teams forming at the front, and most notably this team in red, who have been so dominant throughout this championship in Pro Noctis Rota Red Chili Bikes, that they're starting to gather the whole team up towards the front. So it tells to me that they're looking to try and lead out Jo Tindley. We've got Lucy Elmore, who's on the front, who has done so much work throughout the whole race. Amy Gornall never too far away, just swinging out far on the left hand side, but for Jo Tindley, she's well protected as we see Josie Nelson come towards the fore from Team Coop High Tech Products in that light blue and white jersey on the left hand side.
Well, this is some selfless riding being done on the front now by the teammates of the defending champion. Very, very high speed. We'll be coming through now. 1 lap to go next time through. So we've got around 1,600 metres, 1 metric mile to go now in the National Circuit Race Championships for women. We are here in Kirkcudbright in beautiful Dumfries and Galloway in Scotland. The second time that Scotland has hosted the British Championships, and what a week it has been so far. 2 titles to be crowned tonight. And we'll know in around 1,500 metres who is going to win the title. Will it be Jo Tindley? She's in second place. Jeffers, ever present there in the navy blue, in third position. And just moving up on the outside, Flora Perkins as well. We have now 1 lap to go. Hannah, it's the final lap.
This is an all-out effort now for these riders, and it's got to be full commitment for those riders who perhaps are playing a bit more of a team role. But for those riders who have the objectives, the goals on taking this national title, lots of things will be playing through their mind. At what point do they want to start to open up their effort? What gear do they want to make their selection? As we see Sammy Stewart on the right-hand side come up towards the front for Cams Basso in this fluorescent jersey.
Sammy Stewart really winding things up. She's putting a lot of power down in. She's already splitting the field. Some big gaps are opening up. Sammy Stewart of Cams Basso happy to go very, very long. And the riders are struggling in her wake. She's cornering like she's on a motorbike, winding up, stamping on the pedals. And Jo Tindley in the second position and Emma Jeffers in third.
The speed that Sammy Stewart here on the front is carrying through these corners is exceptional, and she's doing all sorts of havoc behind riders who have found themselves out of position. It's Sammy Stewart, Jo Tindley, we've got Jeffers, Nelson, also up there Charlotte Broughton and Perkins.
Here it is, we're coming in to St Cuthbert Street for the final time. It's the all-important final corner. Jo Tindley, the defending champion, she's got very narrow here. On the brakes, her back wheel goes out, Judanovic. She goes too wide, but she's back in the mix. Just going clear now, Flora Perkins and also Josie Nelson. Nelson on the front, Nelson taking up to Emma Jeffers on the wheel. Nelson looks like she's going to take the title. Jeffers on the line. Oh, it's so close. Oh, I think Jeffers got it on the line. What an absolutely thrilling finale to the National Circuit Race Championships here. You couldn't split them there, but it did look to me as if it was Emma Jeffers or the rider just behind Josie Nelson. What an absolutely scintillating finish. Well, it looks like they've given that one to Josie Nelson, but what a finale there, Hannah.
Wow, that finish after such a brilliant race and with so much action and excitement, and then that finale, and Jo Tindley cruelly on that final left-hander just locking things up. And here's a replay of this. Jo Tindley carrying so much speed, and she just pulls too much brake, loses the back wheel, runs things wide. Fortunately for Sammy Stewart, doesn't get caught up in that, but it does lead Josie Nelson and Emma Jeffers to open the door. They've got a clear run into this finish. And Matt, this acceleration out of the slipstream from Emma Jeffers, coming out of the slipstream of Josie Nelson, take a look at this. It's all down to the lunge for the line. Wow, can't call it. Photo finish.
We've got Josie Nelson as the winner on the screen, but we're going to have to hold our fire till we get that confirmed, because that was scintillating. What a finale. So much action in the final lap. Unfortunately, Jo Tindley just took that final corner just a little bit too hot. She nearly took out Sammy Stewart in that corner. Luckily, she stayed upright. But as you said, what a sprint it was from Josie Nelson. But as you said, Emma Jeffers finishing quickly, bided her time, came out of the slipstream very, very late in the dying metres. And we still don't know who has won the championships. But that was an amazing finale.
And I think even the riders don't know who's taking this. But, usually a rider really has, that self-knowledge that they knew they were first over the line. They could, they could feel it. They could see that the other rider, even though it's a photo finish, they know they've got it. And I think even for Josie Nelson, who we see here, just being selected for England for the Commonwealth Games coming up in the next month or so, still doesn't know. And Jeffers likewise.
She doesn't know. She's still waiting to hear. We had a name on the screen, but we're not going to say that's confirmation just yet until we get... Oh, let's have a little bit of a look. So soon we will find out who is the winner, but I tell you what, that was a very, very entertaining race. Is it this young lady? She still can't... Well, we don't know if she's been told yet. She's done pretty much a lap of honour, but looks rather calm. rather composed, but she took that corner so well, didn't she? Carried enough speed, but it just shows how important. We said cornering, the final corner was absolutely crucial, but just talk us through this last 500 metres. This is essentially what got everybody into position, wasn't it? This amazing turn on the front by Sammy Stewart. There was nothing, almost like a motorbike on the front here.
The power from Sammy Stewart of Cams Basso was exceptional, and a real revelation of the season here. And she carried so much speed into this this final right-hand turn, leading it down this back straight here before we get to the hairpin. Another acceleration. You could see this is the moment where Jo Tindley comes out of that slipstream. She tries to come round the left-hand side and just has a slight lock-up. For Sammy Stewart, just misses out. There was a touch in the wheels
here.
Didn't
she? Yeah.
She did, and that lost all her momentum, all that rhythm, and then the groups from behind. Looks like Flora Perkins took the bronze medal in this circuit championship, but between Josie Nelson and Emma Jeffers, photo finish.
I think have we got confirmation yet? It looks like that might be a smile creeping across her face here. As soon as we get 100% confirmation of the winner, we of course will tell you. But that was an absolutely superb race. Well, what a sprint it was between first and second. Too close to call. Neither rider knew. And as soon as we're there is Simon Lillistone, the organiser of the race here. One of the chief coordinators. Just a bit of housekeeping. Amy Gornall's dad is Alan Gornall, not Mark Gornall, so apologies for that. But the two brothers that raced at a very, very high level in the sport. So off to the podium very, very shortly. Well, let's have a little look back at the opening stages, the highlights of what was an absolutely superb race here. In beautiful Kirkcudbright, Dumfries and Galloway have certainly done themselves proud. The defending champion in the centre, Jo Tindley of Pro Noctis Rota Red Chili Bikes, was one of the main protagonists. As ever in the Circuit Race Championships, there's always a neutral lap for the riders to get a little look at the circuit, and then they will have a rolling start, but a very aggressive opening few laps. And Sammy Stewart was one of the riders to happily take up the slack and force the pace on the front. Cams Basso, one of the teams that were ever present at the front. But Jo Tindley, the defending champion, was never too far behind. And as the racing continued, the bunch got shorter, or smaller and smaller. The teammates of the defending champion also putting in some sterling performances. Isabel Darville on there was there with about half distance. There was a big crash taking out 7 or 8 riders just coming into St Cuthbert Street. Never very nice to see at all. A couple of teammates of the defending champion as well. Team Story also losing a couple of riders to that high-speed crash on the entrance to the final finishing straight. Amy Gornall took things up in the final 3 laps. There was another crash on the corner, taking down Frankie Hall, who briefly became entangled in the crash barriers, but thankfully she was able to remount. And coming in to the last few laps, it was Sammy Stewart, Cams Basso, who had attacked previously on a couple of occasions, turning a huge gear. One rider that was always near the head of affairs as well was the tall figure in the navy blue of Emma Jeffers. Lucy Elmore, one of several attacks by the teammates of Jo Tindley from Pro Noctis. I think on the night the most active team in relation to controlling the bunch and in relation to attacking off the front as well. Total distance of the race was 1 hour and 5 laps. As we headed into the final, it was Gornall again who went on the offensive. Spectra Wiggles rider Amarillo that was doing a lot of chasing to try and get it back. But this woman here, such an aggressive evening's riding by Jo Tindley. but at no point could she fully break the elastic. But eventually the group was reduced to around 25 riders in the lead, still being led by the defending champion squad in red. Amy Gall doing a lot of work. Also Isabel Darvel spending a lot of time on at the front, then heading in to the final lap. Deep into the final lap, it was Sammy Stewart who wound things up. And coming into the final corner, a little bit too hot. Tindley lost the back end, drifted wide, and that opened the door for Josie Nelson of Co-op to accelerate in a small gear. On her wheel was Emma Jeffers. Nelson fighting all the way to the line, then emerging from her slipstream in the last few metres, and with a late lunge as well was Jeffers. But in the end, it was Josie Nelson who took the title. There wasn't much in it. Hannah's just been showing me a photo finish when it was very, very close indeed. But that's the nature of sprints. It did look to me that Emma Jeff was carrying more speed as they crossed the line, but it's all about whose tyre hits the line first.
All about that timing into the finish, isn't it? And for Jeffers, although she was coming with so much speed and acceleration and using that slipstream of Nelson, it was Nelson who took it by a few centimetres.
Flora Perkins of L'École Wahoo takes the bronze medal. Great ride by the youngster. Superb performance there. And she looks pretty happy with that. Aggressive earlier on, but it's the bronze medal for her. Only 18 years of age. What a future Flora Perkins has. Second place for Emma Jeffers. It wasn't to be by a hair's breadth. She lost the title, but I tell you what, this young lady has a very, very bright future. Emma Jeffers, only 17 years of age as well. But our new national circuit race champion for women for 2022 is Josie Nelson. What a ride it is, or was by her, and she'll take that iconic jersey. What a moment. So Team Co-op High-Tech Products now have another national champion amongst their ranks.
They do. Yesterday, one of their riders from Norway taking the Norwegian Time Trial Championships title, and the first UCI win since 2020, and now another victory here for the team of Team Cube High-Tech Products with 20-year-old Josie Nelson. Exceptional stuff, and such bright future for the riders here in Great Britain. Such young ages. We've got 18 years of age Flora Perkins, 17 years of age Emma Jeffers, and 20 for Josie Nelson. I mean, the future is bright, Matt.
It certainly is very, very bright. And the future is wearing the national bands. That has to be, I think, without even going back to the records, one of the youngest podiums we have seen. Remember, this is the top level. This is the national circuit race. This isn't the under-23s or the juniors. This is the race that catches them all. Although there will be separate classifications within that. Yeah,
and this is the elite women's, and for Emma Jeffers, she's still a junior, and to be racing with such maturity of how she rode tonight and how she's rode this season, it's incredible.
Certainly, that was some kick. But Josie Nelson, by the narrowest of margins, is now the British Circuit Race champion. Well, that has set the scene beautifully. Champagne moments for these three brilliant racers who certainly entertained us tonight here on the streets of Kokubri. It's been a magnificent race and will live long in the memory of all three of these riders, even if they do have champagne in their eyes. But it's photo time now, and she gets to wear the iconic red, white and blue national champions jersey for the next 12 months. And that will go on the wall somewhere, no doubt, as well.
It certainly will. A proud and special moment for Josie Nelson, and after such a brilliant season with the team on the road over on the continent, racing in Belgium, in the Netherlands, in France. brilliant. And here is one of the photos from the front on shot. You can just see a few centimetres separating Josie Nelson and Emma Jeffers there, all coming down to that lunge for the line. And you can see that Nelson's arms and the elbows are straight. You know, she
Fully
got that
locked,
lunge first, didn't she?
Well, there we go. Josie Nelson takes the title from Team Co-op High-Tech Products. Second place to Emma Jeffers. She gets the silver medal for JRC Interflon Race Team. Third place and the bronze medal for Flora Perkins of L'Ecole Wahoo. Fourth place for Eleanor King, also of L'Ecole Wahoo. Kate Richardson takes fifth for the Alba Development Road Team. Charlotte Broughton from the AWOL O'Shea Aggressive earlier on takes sixth. Defending champion Joe Tindley of Pro Noctis Rotor Red Chili Bikes Heidi Clagsden will have to settle for seventh place. Eighth place for Amira Meller of Spectra Wiggle powered by Vitus. Ninth, Sophie Enever of Alba Development Road Team. And rounding out the top 10, Sammy Stewart of Cams Basso.
So TV, I'm going to do a couple of interviews with the winner just at the finish area.
So, a wonderful race. You can just see there Emma Jeffers just wiping the champagne from her eyes. But Hannah, it's been a great race. We've got some wonderful champions, and as you said, importantly, we have three young riders with exceptionally bright futures. This is the closing stages of the race. Catastrophic back-end slide out by the defending champion, and these are the dying meters of what was a scintillating finale. We have a new champion. It is Josie Nelson. She is the National Circuit Race Champion of Great Britain. I'm Matt Stevens. Alongside me has been Hannah Walker. Stay with us, because next up is the British Men's Elite Circuit Race Championships. Hello, good evening and welcome to Kirkcudbright in Dumfries and Galloway in Scotland for the National British Circuit Race Championships, and it is the elite men. Over the last few days and into the weekend there'll be 10 national champions jerseys awarded, and we have 2 tonight. We've already had 1 in the women's race, and next up are the men's 1 hour and 5 laps of racing on a wonderfully inventive fast circuit here in the beautiful coastal historic harbour town of Kirkcudbright, just in the shadow there of the beautiful McClelland's Castle. Let's have a little look back to last year. What a thriller it was. It was Ethan Hayter who took the title ahead of Harry Tanfield in a real scintillating finale in the darkened streets of Lincoln to add the time trial title, well, the crit title, should I say, to his time trial title. Ethan Hayter, the national champion. But unfortunately, Ethan Hayter will not be riding to defend his title today. He's already won 1 title this week, took the elite men's time trial title yesterday, and he will be racing on Sunday in the road race. There's the assembled riders, and alongside me to talk through tonight's events, Hannah Walker. Hannah, thanks for being alongside me again. Should be a great race, a thrilling women's race, but today this men's one should be good too.
Thanks very much, Matt. Yeah, it's going to be such a star-studded lineup here for this men's race, and it's going to be hotly contested, as you just said. That Ethan Hayter, the defending champion, not here to defend that national criteria circuit race championships, but with so many other riders with that potential to take the jersey and the gold medal.
Yeah, it's a very, very good field indeed here. A real mixed bag. We've got some couple of World Tour riders. We've got some continental teams as well. A couple of what we will get a good insight into is the up-and-coming under-23 riders. You can see several there from Groupama FDJ. Let's have a little look at the circuit. 1.2 kilometres around, and you can just see here, basically an anti-clockwise circuit, and with that real nasty dogleg just at the end there coming through. There is the finishing line. There's 6 corners on this circuit, and the finishing straight is in St Cuthbert Street. Very wide the vast majority of the time, save for that little chicane coming in to Cuthbert Street before we'd have that dogleg corner. And we saw back in the women's race, and I think it's important to use that, a couple of riders coming to grief. We had, I think it was 3 crashes in the end, and that I think is the most technically demanding part of this circuit. It
is, but when you take a look at it, when you're doing your sighting laps, you're doing your recons before the racing gets underway, and you take a look at some of these corners, there's a few that you look at and you think they're going to be no trouble whatsoever. And the corner that was perhaps slightly the easiest corner, where we saw most of the trouble, and it was only on that final lap in the women's race where we saw Joe Tindley coming into grief on that hairpin.
Indeed. Well, let's have a look at some of the riders to watch out for. In no particular order, Henry Lawton of AG2I Citroën under 23 team, Matt Walls of Bora Hansgrohe, the Olympic Omnium champion in Tokyo, running at World Tour level, Lewis Askey of Groupama FDJ, Joe Pidcock of Groupama as well, and watch out for Sam Watson. The Groupama FDJ squad have brought a very, very strong team indeed. Watch out for Cameron Jeffers of Ribble Well-Tight. His sister, in fact, just got a silver medal a few moments ago. Also Harry Tanfield. He loves a good criterium and is in very, very good form indeed. St Piran will be a team to watch out for as well. They've got several very, very fast finishes indeed. Gabs Culleg, Tom Mazzoni and Leon Mazzoni for that squad as well. Watch out for them in the black. So really interesting composition of field here. Of course, all of the British teams will know each other well, but the young riders from abroad coming into the mix will add a little bit of really interesting texture, and I think there'll be riders that a couple of riders will be pretty unsure about and won't want to give too much headway.
They will, and it's also for those riders that they can't be underestimated, despite not doing too many circuit races this year, that they come off some really good form from the continent. You see the likes of the Groupama FDJ team with Finlay Pickering, Joe Pidcock, Sam Watson racing for the under-23 side of the squad. Then Lewis Askey is part of the World Tour squad of Groupama FDJ. So, as a full riders, they've got a really good contingent. You can just see one of the riders there from the under-23 team of Total Energy. just deciding that he's at the back of the field at the moment, might as well keep going, keep the legs turning, just cut away from the nerves. And it does start to build on the start line, doesn't it, Matt? Those nerves, when you're all surrounded by each other, you can be out, do your own thing, really be focused in your own thoughts.
Yep, it's an interesting circuit, this one. We saw a magnificent women's race, and I think the thing to take away from the women's race is that it was hard to split, wasn't it? We saw the riders shed from the rear of the bunch because of the relentless pace. Also, there were a couple of crashes, but we didn't really see anybody go clear. The biggest attack only gained just a few metres, just a couple of seconds, and that was the defending champion Joe Tindley. So that gives, I think, an indication that this, given the width of the circuit, given the relatively high amount of shelter you can get from riding in the bunch, it's going to be hard to snap this one, isn't it?
This course is a course where you see riders dropping out the back, and you sort of lose the numbers from the rear of the peloton, as opposed to those being able to gain some time or gain some metres at the front of the peloton. So very, very difficult to escape. It's very hard to continue to manage that kind of effort, because there is so many opportunities for riders to try and close the gaps, and because of the nature of the course and just because of how wide the course is, it's incredibly difficult just to gain sort of 10, 12, 15 seconds.
Yeah, it certainly is. Well, the rider on the front there with the ginger beard and the Techers kit, that is Alec Briggs, and a very, very good all-rounder and one of the most highly skilled riders out there. Is yet to really make his mark, I think, in the crit scene, but dearly wants to. He's a real fixed gear protagonist, isn't he? He rides in these short circuits in these underground car parks, that really underground scene, and he is, I think, out of all the riders here, one of the most technically adept riders out there, and the man behind the Techers team as well. Disappointed to get dropped early doors last year in Lincoln, but this is a circuit that I think will give a lot more riders a second chance as we start. And the race is not quite underway. Normally we'll get the defending champion called up to the start there, but that was quite a ferocious little acceleration, even to get into position ahead of this neutralised lap. So the first lap, remember, is neutralised. We'll only get the flag dropping to commence the first hour of racing after one lap has been ridden.
You see how all of the riders, as soon as they were told that they could go to the start line, they wanted to maintain their position in the bunch. They don't want to lose out. They want to make sure that their position is kept, because we know just how difficult it is, especially at the start of a circuit race, when the tempo is so hotly contested and the pace is fast, that the first 15 minutes are incredibly difficult, and maintaining that position up towards the front. You saw Alec Briggs straight away onto that to maintain at the front line.
He wasn't mucking about at all, was he? Just see the Welsh team have got a pretty strong squad as well. That's the Wales Racing Academy. Watch out for William Roberts and Josh Tarling, two particular riders. That's team inspired in the green kit there. It's like a development team, isn't it? The team inspired squad in that green and gold kit. And already a couple of the riders there, as we see in Criterium, is just opting to hold on to the barriers. That means you don't need to get your foot clipped in. And the rider just there with a white top on, with the AG2R Citroën under 23 team. That's another rider to watch out for as well. That's Henry Lawton. Again, if you're riding on his own, he's going to have to ride this one shrewdly. It's always difficult when you're a lone rider against teams with multiple riders, isn't it?
It is. It's very difficult, but what it does mean is you can sit tight. You're only having to think about yourself.
Yeah, you certainly do. It means you can duck and dive a little bit, as the instructions are given by the race commissaire. So we have 1 hour, and then we will take 5 laps of racing. The women were lapping in about 1 hour 36 seconds, 1 hour 34. But the race distance remains exactly the same, both for the men and the women. So Kirkcudbright has seen racing at the highest level before. At the opening stage of the Tour of Britain here several years ago, in 2019 it was, and that stage was won by Dylan Groenewegen. And now we have the British Championships. So the second time they've been held in Scotland since 2013, or the first time, should I say, since 2013, and Dumfries and Galloway have done a remarkable job in staging what has so far been a magnificent championships. So the flag drops and we are underway for lap number 1 of the British Circuit Race Championships Elite Men. Remember, this is lap number 1. It's essentially a neutralised lap, but in terms of the feeling going through these riders, in terms of the nerves, the stress, this can be a weirdly stressful opening lap, and the last place a lot of riders will want to be is right at the back here.
It is, and this is the opportunity for some of these riders to try and better their place and their position within this this peloton. But the nerves of the riders, it does start to build. You sat there on the start line for sort of 10-15 minutes to make sure that you guarantee your place up towards the front line, and so the nerves start to build. You're constantly focused, you're thinking about the race, but with one neutral lap it gives everyone an opportunity to get underway before the motorbike will pull away and racing will get underway for real.
Yep, just going down the back straight. Should be around a minute and a half per lap. This we're now into what is called High Street. We then do another left, staying on the High Street. Then we head on to Castle Street. This is through the pit area here. Been very handy. Tell us how many laps to go towards the back end of the race. We've got a solid hour. A couple of puddles there. A couple of riders getting just a little bit too close to the motorcycle camera. That just shows the eagerness here. We're now moving from Castle Street into St Cuthbert Street. And as you can see, the road drops ever so slightly, so they'll be carrying a lot of pace onto this section.
It's deceptively undulating, this course. From the camera angle, you see slightly downhill here on this this back part into this hairpin, this 180 hairpin, and ever so slightly it gradually starts to climb back up towards the finish line. Only around sort of 1%, but it is a slight incline. As we mentioned in the women's race, how important the gear selection is as racing gets underway.
Well, it's amazing how quickly they go. We are underway now, so we have started. We have officially begun the National Circuit Race Championships for the men. Straight into the barriers, carried way too much pace. I'm not too sure who that rider was, but it's caused a split immediately. He's the only rider to come down, but just came into that corner way too hot, clattered into the barriers. I do hope that young man is okay, but we have got a split straight away. What a way to start the championships. Fingers crossed that lad's all right.
So unfortunate for that rider there. You just saw how much speed he was carrying into that left-hander, and awful crash. Never something we like to see, and we hope he is okay.
Well, we have 3 riders just moving clear now. Already in the early stage of this race. That would have sent some shockwaves through the peloton. It's never something nice to see, but we've got one of the riders from WV Sun God in front, Groupama FDJ, and also Team Inspired, who have an enormous team here. They've got 8 riders, have the men in green, just coming already back down into the high street of St Cuthbert Street, shall I say. And very soon, for the very first time in the men's championships, we'll be taking this really sharp left-hander. We've seen a couple of riders get it wrong, but that gap has actually come back now, and we'll soon get an indication of how fast that these elite men will be lapping. So into the finish, it looks like that gap is just about to be sewn back together, but there's the clock. First time through, 1:27ish. So that was a very, very eventful opening lap of this race, and the riders that have gone through, Jim Brown of WIV Sun God, Sam Watson of Groupama, and it is Josh Charlton representing Team Inspire, the rider in the green in 3rd position. And they are working well, but it is actually the rider from Techers, Alec Briggs, who's trying to bring the gap, trying to shut this back down early on, because this move the riders in this move are representing some strong teams, so this could go clear is what I'm trying to say.
And some strong teams who have strength in numbers in the back, so they could sit tight. They don't have to contribute to the pace at this point. Alec Briggs of Techers, who's in that multicoloured kit with the pink sleeve and the red shoulder, he's the sole representative of his team in Techers here, and this is how, unfortunately, this young man
just went in too quick. It's always awful to see, but just overcooked that bend. Really, it's just the tyre grip trade-off, isn't it? Already we're into another lap. Still, this little group is clear. Sam Watson of Groupama rounds that corner. You just see Alec Briggs there in the pink, just trying to bring this gap back. And as you were just explaining, the 3 teams out in front are the teams that have numerous representations in the back. So this is a good ride by Briggs. He's shutting this gap single-handedly. It looks like he's bringing Askey across the gap with him as well. Yeah, Lewis Askey was on the wheel of the Tekkers rider. We're trying to shut the gap, but this is a ferociously fast opening couple of laps, and some big gaps opening up already, Hannah.
There is, and this is the importance of that positioning and being up towards the front in a circuit race, because the first 15 minutes are incredibly difficult, and that is where, of course, everyone has fresh legs. The pace is always wanting to be pace push, and we see Will Roberts here of the Wales Racing Academy. I'm not sure if he's had a problem or whether that's the end of his race.
Well, he's not too sure exactly. He did look pretty disconsolate there, as you would expect. After only a lap and a half, his race is over, because look at the pace that's being set here, back through the pits already. And as we look at our three leaders about to be caught, or joined, should I say, by Alec Briggs, if you just look to the top of the screen, the riders still towards the back. This is ferociously high. It's not the most technical of circuits, but the speed they're riding at, it's so difficult to shut the gaps. And just look at we have got the whole length of St Cuthbert Street. So rounding the corner at the back end, and we've still got riders coming around the top corner. So the bunch over 100 metres long already.
It's incredible, isn't it? And for some of those riders, they just need to keep on top of their race here and not get too disheartened as well, because we know that once there's a lull within the race, and if there's a lull, there's that opportunity for these riders to get back in. But the length of this peloton, it is incredible. And Sam Watson, you know, he's choosing just to stay up towards the front. He knows that he's in complete control of this at the moment as everything comes back together. Matt Bostock just sewing things back together there for the With Sungod team. Looks like another rider from the team Inspired just moving up on the right-hand side. Looks like Josh Charlton.
Yeah, Josh Charlton was away in that little bit of an early move. So it is all back together. That little breakaway has been brought back to heel. Team Inspired well represented. It's essentially the young development. It's part of British Cycling's development squad, really, isn't it? An interesting kit, reminiscent of the Australian kit, really, isn't it? With that gold and that green in there. But these are the riders to look for the future as we are round yet another lap, and there's still riders fighting to stay in contention. It's so difficult. That's why the reason we saw all the elbow bashing, that the eagerness to get to the front, is because if you're not at the front in a circuit race, it's very difficult to make up ground. Essentially, you have to be moving considerably quicker than the riders in front to even move up, and this is high intensity, high octane racing, and it suits a particular sort of rider as well, doesn't it?
It does. It suits a rider who has that ability to have many accelerations within a race, but that capability to recover very quickly as well. So they're able to recover from the on-off pace as well, which is incredibly important in terms of being able to recover, be within the race, but also when just be able to react to some of the attacks and the moves as well that go in a circuit race too, Matt. Yeah,
well, it's the blue of With Sungod on the front. Two riders clear, and not too far away, Sam Briggs. Leon Mazzone isn't too far away as well. He's the first rider in the black jersey, sat about 7th or 8th. His brother also riding this race. There we go, Robert Scott, Matt Bostock, Josh Tarling and James Bevan. Matt Bostock himself is a very fast finisher indeed. So this long line of riders being strung out at exceptionally high speed. This is going to be a really attritional race. We saw that break go early, but that was more to do with that nasty crash at the front rather than any real acceleration. But that's why it's important to be at or near the head of affairs, because racing like this, we do see spills, we do see riders get it wrong.
And we've seen on one of the corners, especially this top corner, for where you take that right-hander, then you come into this hairpin, that has caused a lot of problem for some riders, especially in that women's race, that it looks a relatively easy corner coming into this, and you can carry a lot of speed. As we see one of the riders there, hand in the air, another problem. Looks like a rider from St. Piran. And there's no laps out available for these riders, so if you suffer a crash, a mechanical or puncture, you have to make it round to the pits, have a bike change, you have any problems sorted out that you may have, but you have to go back into the group that you're in, and it's incredibly difficult, isn't it, Matt, that you'd have to do the chase.
Yeah, it's at this level, the speed they're riding up. Lewis Askey just moving up around the outside there in the white of Groupama F de Jeu. The only rider amongst their number in that kit who rides at world tour level. He just moved onto the wheel of Alec Briggs. A little bit of a shoulder brush there. The rider on the front, Joshua Tarling of Wales Racing, in the red there. Just moving through now, Sam Watson, one of the three-man move who went earlier on in this race. Happy to accelerate clear and forcing Tarling of Wales to try and bring back the gap. But tell you what, Sam Watson looks very, very stylish on a bike as we just go through this little corner that so many riders have got wrong. He's opened up a little bit of a gap now as we head back into St Cuthbert Street again, but still one long line, no bunching up at all, and therefore not many opportunities so far in this race, although it might settle down to surf the reels at all. This is far from surfing the wheels. This is full throttle already.
This has not let up since the racing got underway, and when that flag dropped and the race begun, that for the riders, they've had no opportunity to be off the throttle, be off the gas, just to take a moment to take a breath, take some recovery, have some respite, because for these riders, fighting tooth and nail just to stay in here, and you can see on that camera shot there, snaking their way through the finish line.
Yeah, moving very quickly to Sam Watson on the front, still Josh Tarling, Matt Bostock just behind there in the blue with Sungod, Lewis Askey, Joshua Giddings of Team Inspire, the big tall rider there in that green. And his dad actually was one of the marketing directors of Rally Bikes, and I remember racing, I've got it correct this time, I did race against his dad, Jeff Giddings, who was a very, very good rider indeed. But his son, one of a real crop of future talent that is on display. Watch out for those lads in the green. They've got a lot to prove here. But we've seen a big split there, so we've got a group of about 35-40 riders now moving clear, and this is just because of the relentless pace, and we can just see one of the riders there just trying to sew this back together. And this is what happens in a big field like this. You often get riders maybe not on form, slightly weaker riders perhaps, who let the wheels go. So positioning crucial, so you could have great legs, but if you're behind riders who are struggling, it's very, very difficult to close the gap. So the opening stages until you establish yourself can be exceptionally hard.
At some point, and especially when the pace is so electric, the elastic will snap, and at some point all it takes is for a rider to lose the wheel, not accelerate coming out one of these turns, and things start to open up. And as we know in a circuit race, you know, 1 bike length, 2 bike length, 3 bike lengths, when you're really on the limit and you're on the rivet, it's so difficult to close that gap to the rider in front of you, and then you start to see that race go away. And the more efforts, the more accelerations you're making when you're already under pressure as well. You've got all that pressure on your shoulders. You want to be up there to try and do a job for your team, or if you're a sole representative of your team, that you're carrying a lot of the weight on your shoulders, aren't you, for your team?
Totally. You certainly are. Well, Scott still on the front as they round through again. Rider just having one rider to watch out for a little bit later on is a rider who's had a mid-season transfer, Matt Gibson, in the bright orange and purple. You can just see him, there's about 30 riders back there with a black helmet on with the orange kit, slowly moving his way. He was one of the riders caught behind a bit of a split, but has managed to get back. Do watch out for Matt Gibson, because he is a very, very strong rider and is gradually winching his way back into contention patiently, along with Harry Tanfield. Again, Harry Tanfield, silver medalist last year, has to be one of the favourites here. Not seen him too much so far, but what I can see is he's slowly picking his way back through the group.
And it's a real skill, it's a real art to do, to be able to pick your way through, and also to keep your calm and not to panic in a circuit race.
In the red there, has a look over his shoulder. He will see Sam Watson again. So some of the riders who went clear earlier on going clear again. This is a big gap that's opened up now. In a circuit race, in circuit racing, this is a reasonable gap. So big acceleration here, taking this little group clear. This is the first big significant split, and the gap is opening up now.
Incredible effort here from Matt Bostock. That he won the sprints competition at the Tour Series a couple of weeks ago, so his form is good. He's he's very, very used to this style of racing. Matt Bostock. He's brilliant in criterium races. He's a terrific track rider as well, and the two disciplines really do go quite hand in hand together.
Oh, definitely. Good bit of riding here from the Welsh team. Look, they're just putting riders on the front as well to block. One of the big teams that have missed this one, Ribble Well-Tight. Well, Bostock is absolutely flying. So Ribble Well-Tight in the orange helmets with the blue kit, trying to bring this back together as Matthew Bostock is absolutely flying. That was the fastest lap of this championship so far, 1 minute and 20 seconds. He's absolutely ripping this circuit up. Sam Watson now brings himself across the gap. Doesn't want to bring Tarling or Robert Donaldson with him. Donaldson, the rider in the green and gold there for Team Inspired. So 4 classy riders now. Ideally, these 4 riders now need to get together rather than race in twos, don't they, to be better and more efficient.
They certainly do, Matt. I was just going to say, if these 4 riders can get themselves together and share that workload with the 4 different teams represented in this breakaway, it really works to their advantage. There's confirmation of the 4 leaders: Matt Bostock of With Sungod, Sam Watson of the Groupama FDJ Under-23 team, Josh Tarling of the Wales Racing Academy, and Robert Donaldson of Team Inspired.
If anything, Bostock and Watson here are actually moving clear. Josh Tarling and Robert Donaldson have, you could see there, Sam Watson dropped the other 2 riders that he was with. This is Tanfield now. Tanfield is on the front. Now, he is one of the few riders in this field that has the engine capacity to bring a group like this back together. But the rider on his wheel won't chase because that's a teammate of Matt Bostock. So good riding here by With Sungod. Tanfield on the front, round that corner, cants the bike over, back on the power. 14 minutes of racing done. You can just see there Sam Watson having a little look round, and what he will see is the struggling face of Robert Donaldson, and then the group back behind. Still one long line. This pace is unrelenting. Fast and furious is what this circuit racing is, and this championship so far has not been an exception at all. But finally, I think they've done the right thing here. 4 is better than 2 groups of 2 chasing each other, especially this early in the race.
It certainly is, and as I said before, that if you've got 4 teams who are represented, you just see behind here that the teams who are represented, they're just getting themselves up towards the front. They're covering any moves, any counterattacks, any riders who are attempting to try and bridge this gap to these 4 riders.
Well, the way that Bostock is riding, really, really pugnacious style, but there's looks like we've got a little bit of a chase on at the front, but it's just one rider. It's not a particularly organised situation behind us. Bostock leads in his slipstream in the red, white and blue of the French Under-23 Groupama FDJ squad is young Sam Watson. Robert Donaldson is there for Team Inspired in the green, sat in position number 3. And then Welsh Hope's Rest on the shoulders. So far early in this race with Josh Tarling, and they only have about 5 or 6 seconds at the moment, but it's a significant lead, and importantly, Hannah, they're working well as a collective.
That's the important thing, to make sure that you've got that cohesion within the group that you're in, and that you are sharing that workload, and that you are fully committed to this move too. This is where you're going to be able to gain time, and this is the first time that we've really seen an organised group out front that has a considerable lead on this circuit.
Yeah, definitely. Wheelbase, we're trying to do a little bit of chasing as well. Now it's Alec Briggs hits the front now, and this group continues to reduce in size. Just riders cannot cope with the relentless pace, that concertina effect you get at the front. Briggs, you can just see in the distance there, looking over his shoulders, looking for some assistance, and he hasn't got it. Got one rider just attacking on the left-hand side. There is the time gap. It says still single digits, 8.9 seconds gap, but this group now pretty much in team pursuit formation, doing a cracking job, and if they keep on working together, organisation is absolutely crucial here. But they've got 4 very, very talented riders, and just look at the way Bostock leans into those corners. He's not just strong, he's highly skilled as well, isn't he?
He's really at one, and you can see that confidence, the way that he rides, and his body language as he comes through these corners, that he's able to carry so much speed. And you can just see his teammate there, who's on the front of the group, Rob Scott, who has been in fantastic form, winning the Palais Troy a few weeks ago, that he's just trying to stop the chase, trying to slow things down in that group behind, just trying to disrupt things. He's not getting in the way of anybody, and he's just coming to the front, slowing things down where he possibly can.
Well, there's an interesting story about Paris Troy. That was the first race I ever rode on the continent, and the last race I ever rode in my career. There we go.
There we go. Full of stories, Matt.
So back to the front of the race. 4 men going clear, and they've got a nice little bit of daylight here. They're working very, very well as a collective unit. This is the peloton behind, continuing to lap in about 1 minute and 25 seconds. Watson, Bostock, Tarling and Donaldson doing a very good job, and they've grown their lead now, Hannah, 12.9 seconds, and importantly, the psychological barrier has been broken. They are out of sight on parts of this circuit.
Yeah, when you're out of sight and out of mind for these riders, you know, that motivation, that character chase, knowing that the group is just ahead of you, you kind of start to look around in the group behind. Who's going to do that chasing? Who has missed out? And you just saw the figure there on the front in the orange jersey of that chase group in Matt Gibson, who's from Human Powered Health. And of course, you know, he's had that mid-season transfer this year from his Continental team, joining Human Powered Health, and he was racing at the ZLM Tour a few weeks ago. Unfortunately, suffered a crash, so he's had a bit of time where he's had to spend more time thinking about his recovery coming into this championships, as opposed to that full focus on the training. So he's hoping that he will be hoping that it hasn't hampered him too much, that he can still carry some form from the early stages of the ZLM Tour, but you can just see that figure of Matt Bostock, a former winner as well, back in 2018.
Of course, he knows what it's like to taste success in the Circuit Race Championships, but this group now is absolutely motoring. Now, a little bit of information about Josh Tarling. He's only a youngster. He was selected for Wales for the Commonwealth Games as a junior, and has put out an 18-minute 10-mile time trial. Thank you very much indeed, Magnus Backstead, a colleague of ours, for that inside information. 18 seconds it is now. Tarling swings over, looks over his shoulder. He'll see the crouched, hunched figure of Bostock now rolling through. A couple of other riders now. There's no real organisation. All we are seeing is a great bit of discipline, great bit of team riding by the Welsh squad, putting bodies near the front, not exactly physically pushing people out of the way, but coming into these corners, they won't slam the brakes on, they just won't accelerate, carry the momentum through, and slowly, incrementally reduce the pace, to helping these riders now to extend their lead. And they've got around 300 metres now as we head into St Cuthbert Street again. Well, this lead is looking good. Lewis Askey is on the front, but all he'll do is block for Sam Watson on the front. Askey, very much like the Welsh riders in that group, you can just see the shape of the group behind has changed. It was a long line before. The way they've now started to bunch up might offer up an opportunity for a few riders to get on, but importantly, they're not moving anywhere near as quickly as our four-man group in front. When
you start to lose that chase and that organisation, as you see, you've got Viv Sungod in the blue with Rob Scott, also Wales Racing Academy. You can just see Joe Holt come through the line here, just wanting to try and make sure that he maintains his position up towards the front.
Yeah, good bit of riding there by Joe Holt. Looked like that was a little bit of an attack. It was more just so they can control the bunch here. They want to keep this momentum going, but as you said, that the big team to have missed out here is at Ribble Weldtype, one of the big British squads. They are a continental team. They've got some very, very strong players, but a big surprise that they've missed this move, and they haven't actually put anybody on the front. I'm just wondering if they're going to rest a little bit and then try and fire somebody across that gap, because the longer they leave this, the harder it's going to be to bring it back. That old adage, especially on a circuit like this, and this number is optimum in terms of firepower, but sadly for the four riders in front here, there's only 3 medals on offer and of course only 1 jersey, but right now they're essentially riding as one unit, as one team, to try and give themselves as much of a chance as they can. We're around about a third of the way through this championships now. They can just see the peloton coming down the other side of the road there.
They can, and I think if they keep this effort going and this cohesion between the four of them, you know, they're in a really strong position. And we've seen before, you know, in a circuit race, if you start to lose that cohesion within a group and you start looking at each other because you don't want to commit, because there is 4 of you and only 3 places available on the finish line, this is when the gap can be closed so quickly, because there is riders still willing from that chasing group to try and bridge this gap and bring these 4 riders back.
Yeah, if you'd picked, well, it looks like one of the riders there is having a little bit of a problem there. Robert Donaldson has just dropped off the wheel there. Something happened here. Well, that is very interesting. He's just been dropped. Just cannot, he hasn't had a mechanical. Well, that is a big surprise. This could change the face. Just absolutely on the limit. He's on the limit there. Just could not hold on with the pace. That's a true indication, Hannah, of how ferocious, how intense this is That's a big surprise. So that could change. That we could see Team Inspired now hit the front, because that's changed the face of the racing here.
The whole dynamic of the race has changed now. You almost saw lights go out there for Robert Donaldson of Team Inspired, that it just had nothing left to give in that corner. It just completely blew up, and that shows just how ferocious the pace has been during this national championship.
So 3 riders out in front. Sam Watson of Groupama FDJ, the under 23 version of that team, or squad should I say. Joshua Tarling of the Wales racing team is in the mix too, and in the blue, Matt Bostock of With Sun God. There he is in second wheel, crouched low on the hoods, certainly punches a small hole in the air as they continue to lap a few riders here. That's no surprise, but this group, we talked about the sheer power of the man, Josh Tarling. He does cut a powerful figure on a bike. You can really get a sense of just the amount of power he's able to put through the bike.
The season that Josh Tarling has had, and still a junior, he's already had 3 victories on the continent, on the road. 2 of those coming in Nations Cups, the Junior Nations Cups, and I think his ability, his physical ability, but also him as a rider tactically, incredibly aware, incredibly astute, and for Tarling, I think, again, such a bright future ahead for our young British riders.
It certainly is. But, when you look back to the women's races, where we look at the podium, 20-year-old, an 18-year-old and a 17-year-old are put across both men's and women's sides of the sport. The future is looking bright, and it's something we can say about the sport as a whole. When you look across to the continent, look at the scene, both men's and women's elite professional cycling, we are seeing younger riders. I'm not saying that the younger riders are the finished article, but what they are able to do is punch way above their weight in what we traditionally would think, and it's happening more and more. Riders, we're just getting more out of our riders at a younger age.
We certainly are, and I think they're also given that opportunity at an earlier age to perform and to go for results and to be the protected rider on the road from their team. And you see the likes of those younger riders out on the continent, and just how well they are performing at such an early age. And it's the development from those early years, sort of from your youth into the junior category, the race program that they take on. As now we see a former winner back in 2018. What's the rider from Human Powered Health, Matt Gibson.
Yep, Matt Gibson deciding that enough is enough. 30 seconds is the gap now. Well, in a race like this, that is very, that's around about the speed that it's the third of a lap, give or take. We're lapping at about 1 minute and at 25 seconds. Matt Bostock on the front there, comes from the Isle of Man, 24 years of age, hails from Douglas. And as you said, very, decorated on the track. Had a great year a couple of years ago. He's won in the same year won the Otley GP, the Wales Open Criterium, Newcastle Crit, Colne GP, and Barnsley Town Centre. So he is one of the best proponents of this discipline in the country.
And still, he's achieved so much. As we start to see the rain start to fall again here in Kirkcudbright, that he's achieved so much at such a young age and still only 24. It really is remarkable.
He is. Doing a great job for his team there. Sits forward, sits quite low on a bike. It's having a little bit of a conversation there with Sam Watson. And now we're seeing the rider from AG2R Citroën under 23. This is Henry Lawton now trying his luck on the front, trying to maybe provide the catalyst for an extra little bit of chasing. We did see Gibson try to go clear there, didn't we, in that orange and purple, rather fetching kit from Human Powered Health. They're an American second division team that ride at Pro Tour level, so second division squad. But if there's anybody that could try and get across, it would be someone like Matt Gibson. But 33 seconds at these sorts of speeds is a big ask, even of a rider of his sort of calibre.
On this fast circuit, it's where do you find the extra seconds to try and close this gap? Because you're already on the limit and going at full speed into these corners. There's not really anywhere where you can try and make up any speed. The only opportunity for you to really try and make a dent into this gap of our 3 leaders is if they start to look at each other and they lose that cohesion, they lose that relationship of working together on this lap.
Well, we come through again. They're completely out of sight. They've opened up the gap even more now as they disappear out of sight. They've got the whole, both directions of St Cuthbert Street in terms of a cushion for the lead. This is the group behind, and look, there's probably only about 35-40 riders left. A couple of riders there from St Piran still in the mix, as still Josh Tarling, Matt Bostock and Sam Watson continue to ride completely unified, because at the moment still a long way to go, just over half distance. Remember, the race distance today, 1 hour of racing on this circuit. We're lapping about 1 minute and 25 seconds, and once an hour of racing is done, as the sun doesn't, so we're just starting to lose a little bit of light here. They'll then have 5 laps to go. But I tell you who number 58 here, Josh Tarling reminds me of. He looks like Mads Pedersen, doesn't he, of Denmark, the classic specialist, the former world road champion. Looks powerfully built. He looks like in the future he could be a real classic specialist. Yeah, he does look a little bit like Pedersen to me. Just a small observation there.
He does, and if that's a comparison as a rider, it's certainly not a bad one, is it, to be compared to? It
almost looks like he's riding in the Danish kit there, but it is Welsh. I won't get any more controversial than that, but he certainly looks like a powerful rider. Certainly doesn't have the stature of a junior, but he will be representing in Birmingham, Wales at the Commonwealth Games, and is certainly a key component part of the engine room of this break. And now we're just seeing St Piran driving hard to try and bring this gap back. It's down, well, the gap is way over 30 seconds now. It's going to be approaching a minute. The way that this group is riding at the moment, and the lack of real cohesion behind, and the fact we've only got about 25 to 35 riders left in that group, Hannah, we could see a situation. It's not uncommon, so it doesn't happen all the time. The way that this group is moving around this circuit, we could see them even lapping them. We've got about 30 minutes of racing still to go.
We've seen it in the past, haven't we, in circuit races or the National Circuit Series, Tour Series, where riders have lapped the field, whether that be solo. That's happened on a number of occasions a few years ago, or with a small group, because of the working relationship of these riders, and they've got that cohesion together. But I think with some teams and starting to see depleted numbers in that chasing group, we just saw one of the riders from Ribble Well-Type Pro Cycling in William Brown get caught from these riders, lapped by these riders. So they are down on numbers. They also didn't have one of their standout riders, Finn Crockett, start tonight. So they've only really got Cameron Jeffers, Harry Tanfield and Charlie Tanfield to really get themselves together to do that chasing. And when you don't have the strength in numbers and that real firepower to work with another team perhaps as well, if you've got Ribble Well-Type and St Piran together to share that chase on the front of that larger group, they could try and make an indent to this gap.
Well, stranger things have happened, but what we need is that organisation. And then of course, if we see 2 big teams start to chase, that means that everybody else in that group will start to sit on a little bit, and then that's what kind of breaks the rhythm. They're always thinking of the other riders that you're towing across the gap. That's why this situation is absolutely ideal for the 3 riders out in front. A reminder of our 3 leaders, as we again see Matt Gibson in the orange just try and create a little bit of distance, but they are completely and utterly out of sight. Probably around 30-40 riders in this group. But the speed they're moving round, it doesn't appear to me that there's any organisation whatsoever. And look at this. This is the group in front. So they're now 2/3 of a lap, 40 seconds clear. So we're heading up to half a lap in front. 40.6 seconds. Remember, we're lapping at about 125, 126. I think the gap is going out even more now. So this is a quite remarkable ride by our trio out in front. You just see Watson pulling on those brakes hard, leaning, just pulling back his body weight there, dropping his body weight back, just so he didn't go forward on the saddle because he was braking hard. They're carrying a lot of pace into the corners, and with the riders using disc brakes, they can decelerate a lot later into these corners. So to compensate for that weight distribution, we've seen a lot of the riders just leaning back on the bike a little bit more to dissipate that momentum that would otherwise carry them forward. Got a bit sciencey there. I nearly lost my thread then, Hannah. But back to the front. Josh Tarling of Wales Racing swings over there, number 58, the powerfully built junior. Doing one heck of a ride today, and the vastly experienced and decorated road and track connoisseur on the front there, Matt Bostock. And then Sam Watson has spent the season on the continent and has already had a wonderful season. I think he's on the cusp of maybe moving up to World Tour level to join Lewis Askey. Again, another attack. Lewis Askey then just on the wheel here of Alec Briggs. Alec Briggs are the only representative of the Tekkers team here, as we continue to lose riders from this group behind. The teammates there, look at this gap is closing. They've closed another few seconds here, Hannah. So I say closed it, closing in on the front, so they're opening the lead, but essentially closing the gap in terms of potentially lapping the field.
And that's the important thing, because if it does come to the point where the commissaires feel that there's no coming back from this and they do get lapped, they do have potentially that option to pull the whole group out, and in doing so you don't really get a full run at a result at this circuit race championship. So for Alec Briggs, trying to do something to make an indent into this lead of the trio.
Oh, this is the group out in front, still Josh Tarling on the front. He's 18 years of age, he is 6'5". And we've got information from down on the ground. He has a younger brother who's only 15, who's 6'2". So there you go, an average height between them of 6'3.5". I make that, but 3 riders dominating this race so far, well over half distance now, as the light slowly begins to fade. The rain that we saw on the screen of our moto camera there, thankfully hasn't fully come to pass. The last thing we really want is any more thrills and spills as we head one more time through the pits. This is a great bit of riding here. The conversations are going on. They know that they now have a very, very good chance, because this gap is absolutely enormous by criterium circuit race standards, isn't it? And there's the bunch behind. Well, I tell you what, we definitely have a chance that they could lap the field.
This is quite a magnificent ride from this trio out front. They haven't missed a beat, they haven't skipped turns, they've all worked so well together between Matt Bostock, Josh Tarling and Sam Watson. It's been quite remarkable.
We've got even more information from the Mads Pedersen lookalike, who's just pressing on the front here for the Wales Racing Academy. He's actually 17 years of age and unfortunately has skipped his girlfriend's prom in Newcastle to race tonight, and apparently he's in the doghouse. So for him, he definitely needs to pull on that national champions jersey, and I think his girlfriend may forgive him, Hannah.
And then all will be forgiven. But for Josh Tarling, this again, another rider who is still a junior, finding himself able to take the elite circuit race national title. It is quite remarkable, the strength of this junior.
I think the last time we saw that happen was when Tom Pidcock took the title a couple of 2 or 3 years ago, wasn't it? Because he was a junior when I think he won the elite circuit race title. He did,
and that was when it was held in Sheffield. And again, it was such a standout performance, where Tom Pidcock had made his move up the cobbles before he turned left into that finish line in the centre of Sheffield, and beating and taking some big scalps on that night.
Well, there we go, the gap closing to the group in front. So the gap is closing to the group, the bunch, but the gap is actually opening up. So 51.4 seconds is the lead for our 3 riders out in front. Joshua Tarling just in second wheel there, just leaning back, full on the brakes, carrying a lot of speed. Each one of these riders in front cornering like an absolute dream. And look how quickly all of these riders are back on the power. I do agree with you, Hannah. Josh Tarling certainly looks like the real deal, but to perform at this level at such a relatively tender age of 17 is mightily impressive, powering through the shadow, or in through the shadow of McClellan's Castle here to commence another lap. You really do get the sense of speed. Great shot as they rocket round the corners at probably near on 30-35 miles an hour. We've got some air horns. Or is that a badly played trumpet? I'm not too sure. But whatever it was quite an interesting sound to punctuate the evening here in Kirkcudbright. I think we need to give a big shout out to Dumfries and Gallery for pulling this race together. They've worked very, very closely with the support of Event Scotland, which is in turn part of the Visit Scotland Events Directorate. So without these organisations, this race would not be on. The last time we had the Road Race Championships, the British Road Championships in Scotland, was back in 2013. I think that was when Mark Cavendish won the title, well, won the men's title anyway, but back then. And we've got those races coming up in Castle Douglas in just a couple of days' time, where we'll have 4 more jerseys to give out. We've got 1 more jersey on offer today, and it looks like, for the time being, but anything can happen in crit racing. We know there's a little bit of rain falling. We've seen riders get it wrong. They do need to keep a cool head. They've got a very, very comfortable margin, but they still need to make sure they don't lack or don't lose concentration. If one rider gets it wrong into a corner, it could be all over.
You can't lose, and you can't be complacent at this point in the race either. And this is the thing for these riders. They need to keep that full focus and not rest on their laurels that it's a done deal at this point, because from behind and the chase behind, it's still not all over. You see here St. Piran, they're still willing to drive things on the front. The rider in black still wanting to pursue this chase, and we've seen before, multiple times Theodore Opholzer, who has been on the front trying to close things down for his teammates.
Yeah, good riding here by St. Piran. They're certainly a racing game. The team run by a former teammate of mine, Steve Lampier. It's a team based in Cornwall, and they've had a very, very good race program this year. So a couple of big wins over the last couple of years as well, but unfortunately they haven't managed to put one of their riders in this front group of 3. And there, great shot there of the peloton on your right hand side. I need to remind you, these 3 riders aren't dropped from the peloton. They are in front by the best part now of 3/4 of a lap as we head very deep into this race. We are around 2/3 distance through, and in around 19 or 20 minutes time we will see the lap board with 5 laps to go as the rain, Hannah, starts to fall.
Coming out of this bottom hairpin, Josh Tarlin is always very eager to get back on the pace and really open things up and have a big acceleration, as opposed to sort of winding things back up slowly, knowing the gap that he has got. Don't know if he's showing his card a little bit too early at this point, because when you take a look at Matt Bostock, he's always sitting very, very low, trying to get as aerodynamic as he possibly can. Just the way that he's racing, very, very smart here. I think that experience really starting to shine through on the former under-23 European team pursuit champion.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? It's a very, very astute observation there, Hannah. I've noticed it every lap. He's out the saddle on the power. Well, riders do get out the saddle from a dead turn. They've almost reduced to a walking pace because of the how obtuse that corner actually is. But the way he's stamping on the pedals rather than winding up, and you could argue with a minute's gap, he could do it far more smoothly. Don't cause quite as much to... Ooh, a couple of riders coming very, very close into that corner now. There are the 3 leaders coming in to St Cuthbert Street, and they're on the radio there as well. That was well, not radios, won't be on a radio at all, maybe adjusting it. There's no radios, I should say, just adjusting his zipper there. But the fresh-faced Sam Watson rounding into that corner. They're lapping now, they've settled into a rhythm now of around 1 minute and 29 seconds, where the bunch are running about 1 minute 36. But when you add those 6 or 7 seconds together over 10-15 laps, that's why they are close now to catching the group in front. 105 the gap now.
Wow, it just continues to grow, and at this point, sitting steady, and I think when they can see where that chasing group is, 1 minute and 5, for these 3 riders is quite incredible, and especially when they get a full view of how they're racing as well. When they're going down that sort of back straight of the into the hairpin, they can see what is the chasing group doing. Is it a full concerted chase at the front? Is there a full team on the front trying to bring things back or try and claw any part of the time back here?
Well, it's a great bit of information to have. It's not uncommon, but also not that usual to have a circuit race on a circuit we can see riders coming the other way, but they're almost in the same straight now. This is the leading group coming through the pits in around 16 minutes now. They will get 5 laps to go. Unless one of these riders gets something catastrophically wrong, or one of them completely and utterly blows a gasket, it looks to me as if the medals are going to come, should I say, from one of these riders out in front, and they are slowly but surely, a couple of seconds per lap, getting closer to lapping the field. Now, Hannah, as far as I understand it, it's been a long time since I've commentated on a race where a group have lapped the field. They cannot rejoin the bunch. The bunch will move to one side, won't they? And these riders will be allowed to pass.
They will. That's in an ideal scenario, an ideal world. Yeah. But one thing that these 3 riders, and try and make a bit of an agreement that you're going to go to one side, and they will be pulled from the commissaires. Hopefully that everyone in that chasing group, the main part of the peloton, will go to one side of the course to let these through pass and have a clear run, because they are taking that lap here.
And also, this is where we need to stress the importance of the commissaires getting this right as well. This is more of an observation, because we have seen in the past, and going back several years now, a couple of one particular criterion, and I won't single it out, but we saw the coming together in the last lap. So the bunch were caught by the three riders out in front, and the three riders who were leading the race merged with the peloton on the finishing straight. So I think if that looks like it might happen, the commissaires will ask the group to slow down and move to one side to remove that possibility.
It creates and causes all sorts of havoc when that happens, so we want to do it as smoothly and as fairly as possible. And I think that's the thing here, that the commissaires, the role that they're going to play here is going to be vital. It
certainly will. They're not going to catch them for a couple of laps yet, but they are almost in at the same finishing straight. Well, in a moment they will be. Now, this is the head of the peloton, so then I think next time through they will be literally on the finishing straight. And there is the gap, 1 minute and 3 seconds for our three riders out in front. And a reminder, if you have just joined us, this is the National British Circuit Race Championships for the elite men. And we have three leaders: Joshua Tarling of the Welsh Racing Academy, Matt Bostock of With Sungod, and Sam Watson of the Under-23 Groupama FDJ squad. We've got 45 minutes of racing. In around 15 minutes time, these riders will be shown 5 laps to go. So the total distance is 1 hour of racing and 5 laps. And the distance of each lap here in this beautiful old town of Kirkcudbright is 1.2 kilometres, 1,200 metres round, and they're lapping in around 1.5 minutes at the moment. And this has been a consummate display of strength and skill by these riders here. They have been untouchable.
They have, and from so early on in the race as well, and tactically getting themselves into that position. We saw that one of our original breakaway riders in Robert Donaldson of Team Inspired, unable to maintain and stay with the pace of the other three riders within this breakaway, and Sam Watson, part of an early move that got caught. They all came back together. Again, he found himself in such a good position in the peloton, found himself in this move, and it was a hard chase to close things back together.
No, it certainly was. He's clearly got very, very good legs. They can just round that corner. They'll just see the tail end of the peloton as Watson, again, this time you can just see Watson flicks the elbow there. Rather than stamp on the pedals out of that corner, he wound it up, because last time out of that corner, he's going to want to stamp on the pedals big time. But right now, it's about keeping that pace high. They don't even need to catch the bunch in front. This is the thing. As long as they keep them in sight, they don't arguably, Hannah, need the complication of going past the group, because at the speed they're going, well, we shall see. But we've still got around 20-25 minutes of racing still to go.
And just how large that peloton is still. You know, there's still around 40-45 riders in that group. So as you say, Matt, it does become quite chaotic if they do have to pass all of those riders. You know, it's for these three. You know, they've got the full width of the course of the race here. All of that to play for within themselves, and I think, you know, it does start to get quite complicated if they do make and close the gap and make the lap.
Yeah, it certainly does. And of course, me and Hannah discussing this, it's not any criticism at all. It's just that these situations do happen in circuit racing from time to time, and they can be quite complex affairs. But also, these riders, they just want to keep on doing what they're doing here, and they are slowly but surely reading them in. So I'll be intrigued to see how the commissaires do play this one, because as you say, the speed the bunch are moving at, it's going to take them maybe a lap just to get to the front of the bunch.
And I think if some of these riders, namely Samuel Watson and Josh Tarling, have never been in this position before in a circuit race, coming up to lap a large group, you're not quite sure of how do things go, how do we play it, what is the situation, what's the scenario. Matt Bostock has that experience from riding in the Tour Series and the National Circuit Series for many, many years. Yep. So he almost has that upper hand, that upper knowledge of how to handle this situation.
And we've seen riders in the past, well, there's an attack here by Lewis Askey. And there's no real harm attacking here at all. He's certainly not, I don't think at this late stage, going to provide any problems for this group out in front. 47 minutes and counting of racing. There's a couple of conversations going on here. I'm wondering if they are discussing the situation up in front, whether they need to just back things off a bit. Because the most important thing here, Hannah, is we want a clean race for the title now, don't we? Because these riders, one of these riders, by the looks of things, 99.9% sure, because you just never know, will become the British Circuit Race champion. So we want a clean finish, no ambiguity, and then the rest of the bunch to battle it out for the minor placings.
We certainly do. We want to see this race won sort of fair and square, nothing getting in the way of who will eventually take the National Circuit Race title. And you just saw then Matt Bostock of With Sungod and Samuel Watson just having a little word together, sharing a few thoughts of what's going on. So that communication still there, the working relationship in this front group still very much there. But Samuel Watson very happy to always take this hairpin in the first position. Josh Tarling, as ever, for sort of the last 12-13 laps in this position, coming out of this bottom corner, getting things back up to pace. And for Tarling, doing such a great job while still a junior.
Yeah, 17 years of age, it's worth reminding you. A little bit younger than the castle you've just seen on the left-hand side, of course. A beautiful middle-aged ruin of McClelland's castle. Dates all the way back, just past the Middle Ages, in fact, to the 16th century. But this town itself dates all the way back to 1455. Of course, we are within Dumfries and Galloway. This is the town and parish, and it's also a royal burgh as well, back from 1455. And in terms of the geography of this beautiful town, it lies just southeast of Castle Douglas. That will be the location for the British Road Race Championships, which takes place on Sunday. So most of the riders in both the elite women's criterium championships and this men's championships will be racing the road race on Sunday. There'll be a few sore legs, so I think there'll be quite a few little gentle cafe rides throughout Dumfries and Galloway tomorrow.
They certainly will. I think these riders have a day to take a look at what the road course has to offer, maybe ride sort of, take a look, make sure you look at that finish, spin the legs out after tonight's efforts, and yeah, well deserved coffee and cake at one of these wonderful cafes.
And make sure you tune in as well to watch the race on Sunday. Myself and Hannah will be taking you through both the elite men's road race and the women's road race on Sunday. So a packed weekend of racing. So the gap holding steady at 104. Now I have observed that these three riders, almost to me, I get the sense they don't want to pass the peloton. I just get the sense that they're riding now. They're riding hard enough to feel the race effort. They've banked that gap they've got. They've got a nice cushion, best part of a minute and 5 seconds. They don't need to now go too deep. So I think they might just hold off lapping the field. I think they could if they wanted to, but I don't know what that will bring them. They would just hurt the legs a little bit more and deaden the sprint at the end.
It was coming very, very close, wasn't it, Matt? And it was almost, within the next couple of laps with this pace and the speed that they were going at, that they were able to lap the field. But you can see the urgency out of some of these corners has gone from this leading trio, that they're quite happy to have a real clean run at this National Circuit Race title. They don't want to get caught up in potential chaos and havoc having overtaken the group.
Just see one of the riders from Wheelbase there, taking a wheel and jumping back into the field. Now if we can, just the way they're riding at the moment, they seem to be riding well within themselves. There is the bunch. So every single lap now, almost metronomic-like, they've kept that gap roughly the same. If anything, they might be dropping ever so slightly further away. And it won't be too long. In fact, we've still got about 7 minutes of racing before we have then 5 laps to go. Again, a little bit of moisture. There's a couple of little umbrellas up there. It's not pouring down with rain, but it's that kind of rain that wets you through. As we know. So 52 minutes should I say, of racing, and Josh Tarling, the 17-year-old Welsh sensation, takes this group of 3 through. In his slipstream, Matt Bostock of With Sungod, and then Sam Watson of Groupama FDJ. They are your 3 riders out in front, and they look to be the riders that will fight it out in the next 15 minutes for the British National Circuit Race Championships. We are in Dumfries and Galloway, in the beautiful town of Kirkcudbright. The location a few years back, in fact 2019, this very town was the location for stage 1 of the Tour of Britain, and it was a certain Dylan Groenewegen who took the stage here. So they certainly do like their cycling in Scotland, and in particular this area. And I remember back 10, 20, 30 years, Hannah, to the Girvan 3-day that used to take place over Easter, which was a race I always used to love. So I've got very, very fond memories of this part of our country. And they certainly love their cycling, and they put on a wonderful show over the last few days.
They have, and it is terrific, and you can see the fans at the side of the road also thoroughly enjoying what this British Championships has to offer. This weekend, a great sort of opportunity for families, for those who are real fans of the sport, and those who potentially don't follow the sport, and it's something new to them to really get themselves immersed in. And I remember it must be 12 years ago, back in 2009, 2010, there used to be a women's national series up in Dumfries and Galloway as well, so really cycling etched in their nature up here.
Certainly is. They've done a cracking job, and it's not over yet. One jersey decided tonight, and we've got another one to come, and we will know in around 15 minutes time. They should, or they're lapping in about 1.5 minutes, so we should be about 7 or 8 minutes past the hour when we know who is going to win this title. Now, talking about the 3 riders out in front: Josh Tolling of the Welsh Racing Academy, Matt Bostock of With Sun God, Sam Watson of Groupama FDJ. To me, in terms of a straight-out sprint, I would go for Bostock. I'm not calling the finish here, but what that suggests to me is that if Tarling wants to win this one, he will have to try and go long. He's more of a time trial specialist than a pure sprinter, and I think the same can be said of Sam Watson. And I think both of them will know if they're going to try and beat Bostock, they have to lead him in the last few laps.
The acceleration and the reaction and the kick on Matt Bostock is one you don't want to take him to the finish. So if they do want to try and beat him here, they are going to have to do something potentially from a couple of laps out, a long way out, when it really starts to get tense. You know, the tactics of this trio really start to play into how the result will unfold here. And for Bostock, all 3 of these riders, terrific track riders, but in very, very different disciplines within the track. For example, Tarling, excellent team pursuiter, individual pursuiter, likewise with Sam Watson, the former junior European team pursuit champion. Bostock, quite a great all-rounder actually in terms of the team pursuit, but also as a bunch rider, Madison, scratch race, points race. Very, very astute and very, very good at those types of finishes, those accelerations. And
he'll be thinking now, I mean, as well as his own game now, as we head deep into this race, it's only going to be now 3 minutes or so. We'll get an indication next time through when we will get 5 laps to go. It might be the next time through, or just actually 55:20 is the time, so they'll do 1 more lap and then they'll get 5 laps to go. And we understand that these riders have actually been told ever so slightly just to slow things down if they can, and that will mean that we will get a clean sprint, and I don't think they'll mind that too much. Although the thing is, if Tarling and Watson want to try and leave Bostock behind, and Bostock will be expecting maybe some attacks, he won't be expected to take these, for those 2 riders to give him an armchair to the finish. He will get attacks, but I think there's a gap. The gap has now ebbed. It was 1 minute and 9 seconds, it's now a minute, so the bunch have taken back a little bit of time. We've still got a little bit to go before we reach that little hairpin bend at the bottom end of St Cuthbert Street. And here we go. Watson shaves a bit of speed off, cants his bike round, back on the power again, but not stamping on it, just winding it up nice and gently. 104 is the gap now.
Because of this hairpin, it's a real marker of their time gap, and that they're just keeping the chasing group, the main part of the peloton, they're pegging that time. And they might be losing a couple of seconds here and there, but they know, because they can see them each lap in a more or less the same location and the same point when the chasing group go through the finish line, they're almost at that same level, that they know they're still in safe hands at that point in terms of that time gap.
Well, Alec Briggs on the right hand side takes them through, keeps that pace nice and high. He'll be eyeing now for the next best spot. His very, very quick finisher. It looks like Josh Giddings now moves through to the front. So we've got a Josh on the front of the peloton and a Josh sitting 3rd wheel here. There he is, the big Welshman. What can he do? 6'5", selected already for the Commonwealth Games for Wales. He's done an absolutely superb performance, but I think that the favoured rider, I think for many people here, if it does come down to a sprint, is the man in blue who's just swung over, Matt Bostock. He's the more senior in terms of age as well. Just rolling through there, Sam Watson, Rupama, Evdija. All of these riders, unsurprisingly, look different on a bike, but all of them looks pretty optimum, doesn't it? Watson looked quite graceful on a bike, and Tarling looks like he has the mould of a real classic specialist in the future to me. And we're seeing that, we've seen riders who excel on the track and in time trialling, perfectly equipped to laying down big power in the classics as well. But that's a little bit of a long way off yet. He's still developing, but boy, has he got some strong engine. So Tarling leads them through. Bostock in the slipstream of the Welshman, and just sat behind him, Sam Watson. We now have 5 laps to go. 5 laps to go, Hannah. When will we see some attacks coming from everybody else? They've got a big cushion here, but they don't want to take Bostock to the line. They'll know that.
They're still very happy to share this workload out here in this trio. You just saw Sam Watson doing up his dials on the shoes, just starting to get himself race ready for perhaps an attack, perhaps for that finish. But the faster man of the trio, Matt Bostock, he's got a bronze medal in this event previously. He's never pulled on the national jersey in the Circuit Race Championships. Took the bronze back in 2019 when it was held in Norfolk, when Joey Walker took that title. And so for Bostock, he really wants to take these British national stripes, to wear these stripes for the next year in all the circuit races he does on the circuit.
I think it's even more resonant, isn't it? We all know people want to win the road championships, but because of the history that we have with circuit racing in this country, it's such an important, prestigious title to win, as is any title, the TT title, the road title, the multiple titles on the track. Just to wear those stripes in this sort of company, well, it's a big deal. So we will get a brand new elite circuit race champion. Who will it be? Will it be Josh Tarling, sat in third wheel? Notice Tarling there just missed a turn. That was quite interesting, forcing Sam Watson into second position. 4 laps to go.
You see, Sam Watson is so attentive of what's going on, where the other 2 riders are, what they're doing. Is there an acceleration coming? Constantly looking over his shoulder, left and right, just making sure that he's prepared for a potential attack to come, because he'll know, the likes of Josh Tarling, that he will be capable of trying to make an attack and trying to go long here to try and take this title. And so for Watson, sandwiched between Bostock and Tarling, he has to be so aware of what's going on.
Look at how many times Watson, there we go, he's a big attack. He needs to force Bostock to chase it. They've clearly had a bit, and maybe a little bit of a conversation here. Big move by Tarling. Swings left and then right, carrying the maximum momentum. Now he's starting to lay down the power, but Bostock straight onto his wheel there. And that was very interesting now. I think Watson did the right thing. The fastest rider in this group is arguably, on paper, the man in position number 2, and that's why Watson didn't try and chase him down. This is getting very tactical indeed.
Also for Bostock, the way he reacted to that move of Josh Tarling there, he was very calm, in a very calm manner, that he wasn't stomping on the pedals, again, just saving the legs, not making a huge acceleration, but getting up to pace, closing the gap, getting in the slipstream of Josh Tarling. When you take a look at the figure of Tarling and how much shelter that he gives Matt Bostock, and he can close that gap. Bostock just wanting to make sure that he leads through the line with 3 laps to go, Matt.
This is the National British Circuit Race Championships for elite men. We have 3 laps to go and 3 riders out in front. They have dominated the race so far. They came to within about 150 metres of lapping the field. They've slowed a little bit. Things have got a bit tactical now. Matt Bostock is there in the blue. Another attack now from Joshua Tarling. The 17-year-old Welsh sensation attacks. Takes a lot of pace into this corner. But as you can see, Matt Bostock is equal to, or is he? The gap has opened up here. This could be very difficult to close here. Tarling using that TT prowess, using that pursuit ability to open up a gap, but Bostock almost motionless, smooth as silk, metronomic-like, sews the gap back together. But this could open up the door now for Sam Watson. So he continues with this acceleration here, Tarling. The gap hasn't quite been shut down just yet. It's almost as if Bostock is letting him dangle out in front. Intriguing.
It's quite an art, quite a tactic, and to be so confident in your form and your capabilities. Matt Bostock, he knows he's got good legs, he knows he's in good form here, and he wants to try and let Josh Tarling dangle out front, use his energy, use the legs and that he's got here tonight. And Bostock so in control of this race so far.
2 laps to go now. Bostock looks over his shoulder. You'll see the hulking figure of Joshua Tarling in the red of the Welsh Racing Academy. Still on the front, the man in blue for With Sun God, and sat third man. Hasn't followed any of these moves, hasn't chased down an attack, hasn't launched an attack of himself, but he's tightening up the ratchets on his shoes. Always best to do that out of sight of the others. And another little move goes on the right hand side. A seated acceleration from Tarling now. Almost waits and looks. Takes a lot of pace into the corner, certainly cornering well. That extra little bit of body weight, making sure his bike is adhered exceptionally well into those corners. And he's opening up a little bit of a gap here now. This is very interesting stuff, but Bostock isn't panicking. He's riding so smoothly.
Samuel Watson as well of Groupama FDJ also riding very smart, that he's not panicking to any of these attacks and moves going from Josh Tarling at this point, but he is forcing Matt Bostock to do all of the chasing here, and it's a real risk that he is taking. He won Gent Wevelgem under 23 at the start of this year. He's had so many great results this season. He's in a position to try and take the national circuit race title here.
He certainly is. He's ridden very calmly. It appears, well, both of these riders, I mean, they ride on different teams, but they know how dangerous Bostock is. Another big acceleration from Josh Tarling. Accelerates clear. The gap hasn't been brought back, but this is very intriguing riding from Bostock. We're now into the final lap. 1 lap to go. Our 3 leaders take the belt. One of these riders will be crowned the British Elite Circuit Race Champion. Who will it be? Josh Tarling leads in the red of Wales. Matt Bostock, previously a medalist a couple of years ago, desperate to taste success and pull on that jersey, in second place in the blue of With Sun God, and also in the mix in the red, white and blue, Sam Watson of Groupama FDJ. We have around 800 metres to go, Hannah.
Samuel Watson just licking his lips, just got a full overview of what is in front of him, getting himself prepared for this finish. And you can see as these riders constantly looking over their shoulder at what's to come. And I think Samuel Watson sort of in a hot seat at the moment, having that full overview of these riders and almost coming to track stand like as they try and finesse things, try and force other riders to come through. And Tarling slipping through, sit into third position at this point, and Bostock wanting to lead things out from the front, and he wants to try and get to that hairpin in the first position. He takes that final right hand corner, only the left hand corner to go.
Here we go, our 3 reelers. Big acceleration here by Matt Bostock. He wants that first position. We saw what happened in the Women's Championship, so it's Watson that takes the lead here. Carries a lot of pace into that corner, but on the inside it is Matt Bostock. He accelerates in the blue. Bostock hits the front. It looks like Bostock is going to take the championships. I don't think Watson can do it. Bostock takes the win. Matt Bostock of With Sun God is the National British Circuit Race Champion. What a sprint it was. A composed, measured, powerful effort. He is the British champion. Well, he was the favourite, but what a way to do it. We still a second place there for Watson, a magnificent third place for Joshua Tarling. But this man was never really on the ropes here. This is the peloton coming through. Liz Askey leading the group. It looks like Mazzone is there as well. Again, the sprinting for this final corner, not just for the line, so almost 2 sprints for the price of 1 here. So Askey takes them in, slams on the anchors, almost reduced to walking pace, stamps on the pedal as well. Askey very quick indeed, and opens up a gap almost immediately. Mazzone, I think, is there for St Piran, but it looks like Askey is going to take 4th place. He might be rolled on the line though. Very close indeed. In fact, Mazzone takes it, I think, just ahead of Askey. But the medals have already been won, and this man is your national champion. Well, what a finish.
An incredible, incredible race, and this is just how much it means to Matt Bostock of With Sun God. It's an emotional moment, you know, coming close to winning the title back in 2019. He got that bronze medal, and for Bostock, it's that huge realization that, you know, a dream to take the national title in the British Circuit Race Championships has been accomplished.
Let's have a look at this again. It's a brave, bold move by Sam Watson to take it into the corner. But just look at the that crisp, devastating, violent acceleration, finding the gears, and in the end just cruised through well over a length clear. Time to look around and time to soak it up. Punches the air with delight. What a win by Matt Bostock. I think there are definitely a few tears there. Congratulations there from his teammates. He is our new national champion, and there will be ridden in on the domestic scene next year. Well, for the rest of this year, of course, we saw Ethan Hayter take the title. Didn't really wear it too much, of course, because he rides abroad most of the time, riding at a World Tour level. But this is very important, even more important, arguably, for the continental teams, the domestic-based teams. He can show off that jersey for the next 12 months in multiple races, kind of the Elite Circuit Race Championships series, and of course the Tour Series as well.
It's a hugely prestigious title to win, and especially for the continental teams who race in the British domestic scene, that to be able to show the champion colours in the likes of the Elite Circuit Series or the Tour Series, it's a hugely proud moment, not just for a rider but also for the teams as well.
Oh, here's that shot from another angle. Great shot from the motorbike. It was never really in doubt, but fair play indeed to Sam Watson. He tried to take it to Bostock, and there's the moment where the championship was won. The checkered flag, the punch, the scream, and the thumbs up. That's a big, big win. And great to see. This will be a proper lap of honour. No photo finish here. He knew all along that he got that one. As soon as he hit the pedals out of that final corner, it was never really in doubt, was it?
It wasn't, and despite not getting into the hairpin, the 180 hairpin into first position, the door was almost left wide open from Sam Watson as he just ran it slightly wide. Bostock managing to get in the left-hand side there, and that ferocious acceleration immediately out of the turn, exiting the corner and into the run into the finish line was quite simply remarkable. Really magnificent effort here from Matt Bostock, and you know, the gear selection, everything down to a T.
He wasn't over geared at all. In fact, he used quite a low gear to just get on top of the gear straight away, and I think there was one sprocket change with about 70-80 metres to go, and he had the gap at that point and essentially just rolled it across the line. Great to see his teammates Jim Brown and Rob Scott congratulating him, accompanying their teammate on this very enjoyable lap of honour. That was lovely to see as well, that little solitary moment that you talked about. Just shows how much winning the title means, especially having medalled in the past. Finally taking the title. He takes that lower corner one more time, and this time he is the national champion. Selfies all round. Thumbs up as well. He's going to enjoy this moment, isn't he?
A very, very popular winner here in Matt Bostock, and you can just see also a special moment for the fans, for the crowds. Get a moment with the newly crowned British Circuit Race champion, and as ever, very popular.
Been a wonderful afternoon, a wonderful evening here in beautiful Dumfries and Galloway. We're in Kukubri, the location for the British Championships. It's been a wonderful course. This was the opening lap of the men's race. And that rider unfortunately came to grief, just overcooked it on that corner. But that crash caused an initial split that was brought back. And it wasn't too long into the race when we had that decisive move that went clear. It was Matt Bostock who accelerated clear on his own. Eventually he was joined by Sam Watson and Josh Tarling. Very, very quickly they started to open up the gap. 20 seconds, moved out to 30, then out to 40. Good riding by the other riders from the teams represented in front, doing a little bit of blocking. And one rider also in the mix early on was Robert Donaldson of Team Inspired, but unfortunately Donaldson couldn't keep with the ferocious pace and was dropped with around about half an hour of racing still to go. The three continued in front. The youngest, Josh Tarling, tried several attacks on the run-in on the last few laps. The youngest rider in this breakaway, 17 years of age, showing great strength and real composure and maturity. It looked at one point, well, for at least 20 minutes or so, as if our three-rider breakaway was actually going to lap the field. But fortunately for our commissaires, that didn't happen. The junction was never quite made. But unless something strange were to happen, the winner of the Elite Championships was going to come from one of the three riders out in front. Josh Tarling was the first to try his hand. Big acceleration, but riding with real composure and importantly strength was Matt Bostock in the blue of With Sun God, shutting down several moves from a very impressive Tarling, including one on the last lap as well. They continued on. Deep into the final lap of the race, it was Tarling again. Knew they didn't really have the sprint perhaps to match the sheer pace of Matt Bostock, but with a lap to go, tried to go clear once more, but then into the finishing straight for the final time, showing everybody else a clean pair of heels, was Matt Bostock. The 24-year-old from the Isle of Man is your new national champion. So confirmation of the top 10 in the National Elite Men's Circuit Race Championships. Matt Bostock of With Sun God is the winner. Sam Watson in the silver medal position representing Groupama FDJ. Josh Tarling rounding out the podium, the youngster from the Wales Racing Academy. Fourth went to Leon Mazzoni of St Piran. Fifth, Lewis Askey of Groupama FDJ. Then we had Ben Peatfield of Vendée Pays de Loire. Jim Brown, 7th for With Sun God. Matt Gibson, the former champion, up there in 8th for Human Powered Health. Joe Beckinsale for the Wales Racing Academy, having 2 in the top 10 for the Welsh team. Then rounding out the top 10, Oliver Stockwell. Time for a bit of podium action. Favourite bit of the day, especially for Matt Bostock.
Yeah, and the celebrations, I'm sure, will be large. Not too large because, of course, you've got the road race coming on Sunday. But I think a really proud moment for Matt Bostock there. Of course, he's also been selected to represent the Isle of Man at the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham. So another big moment, a big goal coming up for the man from the Isle of Man, and a rider that has come through the talent pool in the Isle of Man. They produce so many incredible riders, you know, both in the men's and women's pro peloton. And Matt Bostock, one of the riders to come through Dot Tilbury's racing league. You know, of course, started off at the Isle of Man Sports Centre racing there, and for Matt Bostock, you know, a brilliant even here in Dumfries and Galloway.
Well, your men's podium here in the Elite Men's Circuit Race Championships, with the youngest riders in the field. This is Josh Tarling of the Wales Racing Academy. He has a very bright future indeed. He can be proud of that position. In the silver medal position, representing the under-23 Groupama FDJ squad, is Sam Watson. A brave, intelligent performance by him, holding back, trying everything into the final corner, but unfortunately for him it wasn't to be. So he will have to settle for the silver medal. But it's all about that jersey. The national champs bands of British Circuit Race Champion for 2022, Matt Bostock of With Sun God. The man from Douglas in the Isle of Man. This is his first jersey, and boy has he deserved it. The bronze medal, as you said, Hannah, a couple of years ago, and now he can savour this moment here in Dumfries and Galloway. And I tell you what, he might even go to bed in it. So there's your podium, smiles all round. Man that's been on the scene a long time, worked hard, has come close, and finally gets his reward. Matt Bostock is your national champion. for a little bit of champagne perhaps. So the bubbly is brought onto the stage. Smiles all round. Flowers distributed too. Let's hope too much bubbly doesn't get dropped on the floor. They're in their cleats as well, and the cycling shoes. Not the safest. Now, big moment for Bostock here. He's worked so hard. He's been at such a high level. But this is his first national champion jersey.
Yeah, it's his first champions jersey in the Circuit Race Championships, and it is a very proud moment for Bostock, and it's something that he's been working towards. We've seen him always present up towards the fore and in the circuit races in the British domestic scene, and had such a terrific season so far. But this is the moment we're waiting for, the champagne showers and Bostock drenching Tarlin there.
Great to see. Smiles all round on the podium here in the Dumfries and Galloway. It's been a wonderful set of races here this evening in Kirkcudbright. We've had 2 national champions crowned, and there is your new national elite men's circuit race champion with the biggest smile you're ever to see on his face. That is Matt Bostock.
It's impressive as well the way that Sam Watson has recovered after coming off the back of the Baby Giro, completing that stage race and then only a few days rest and coming here and taking the silver medal at the British Circuit Race Championships.
Definitely one to watch for the road race on Sunday as well. He's got a full day to recover, more than able I think to recover, although this effort was intense. It's only an hour long, so feet up tomorrow, a nice spin, and then we have the British Road Championships on Sunday.
Josh, fair play. How does it feel? A bronze medal? Any disappointment whatsoever, or are you just made up with the way that race played out?
A little bit. I mean, everyone wants to win, but I think I tried my best to. I think a couple of times there was a couple of opportunities in the last sort of five, 6 laps, so try to take advantage of that. But I think third was as good as it was going to get, so yeah, happy.
When those 4 riders got away and you were a part of it, did you think that's the winning move, or were you surprised that you got the gap that you did?
I'm surprised we stayed away. I think we were lucky that like the 4 of us had quite big teams in the bunch, so there was a lot of I think there was a lot of blocking going on, so I think there was a bit of luck there. So, but no, I'm not sure we were going to stay away for the whole thing.
Well, it's a brilliant performance. 18 years of age. You must be made up.
Yeah, happy.
Yeah. Well
Cheers.
done. Well done.
Thank you.
Very many congratulations, Sam.
Oh, great to hear from Josh Tarling there.
I mean, was there anything else you could have done? I guess the 3 of you knew that Matt Bostock probably had the fastest sprint, but you ran him very close in the end.
Yeah, I don't know what else I could have done, to be honest. I wanted to be first into the last corner, which I was, and out here with the drizzle it was very slippy, and I locked up coming into the corner, but I mean, to come in first you've got to come in with speed, so yeah. I don't know what else I could have done. He's a Tour Series king, so yeah, fair play, he beat me. Absolutely, and you knew as well that Josh would have to attack from a long way out. You would have been anticipating that move as well, and you managed to shut him down. Yeah, I made Bostock do all of that, and yeah, he still beat me. So, and yeah. You've come here from a very successful Baby Giro as well, so quite the contrast. Yeah, I mean, I haven't had a win for a month and a half now, probably. So a couple of second places. So I'm hoping the win comes soon. Brilliant. Many congratulations. Yeah, well on your silver medal. Cheers. And Matt, in you come. From a very successful Tour Series to a national champions jersey. Yeah. Well, your smile says it all. That's a tremendous achievement, isn't it? Yeah, just to be honest, more relief. I think in 2019 I was desperate for it, and I'd won 5 of the crit series beforehand, and I was really G'd up for it, and it didn't happen. And last year I had a bit of illness, it didn't happen again. And then this year I've been ill the past week, just a cold, and I've just been thinking, is it ever going to happen? And I got in that move. I sort of forced it myself, and I knew it was a good situation, but then I had 45 minutes just in my own head, just thinking it's mine to lose now. I'm in a 3, and the pressure was just building. So I think more relief than anything. I'm obviously so happy, but I just felt like it was mine to go wrong, sort of thing. Yeah, you were the marked man in that group of 4. Were you surprised that group of 4 got the gap that it did as quickly as it did? I could feel it was a bit tentative, and everyone
I felt good, but I couldn't tell if everyone was sort of sandbagging a bit. I guess obviously it's nationals and no one wants to like push the wind, and I just thought I'm gonna try here and see what happens. And then yeah, like I said, I felt good, so I got the gap, turn around. I just thought I need to force this and then see what happens. And in crits like this, once you have a gap, you can sort of toy the bunch. So once you know you've got 20 seconds, you can obviously, if it comes back, you just press on a bit more and you can just sort of hold that gap. So yeah, once we had it, it was like this is perfect.
And a whole calendar year of crit racing now in the national champions jersey. That's going to be an immense pleasure, isn't it?
Yeah, I can't wait. Obviously the tour series and the crit series are amazing atmospheres and it's fun to race. So doing it with the bands on, yeah, it'll be extra special.
Brilliant. Well played. Well on, Matt.
You.
Cheers.
Thanks a lot.
Well, it's been an absolutely magnificent British Circuit Race Championships tonight. And that smile said it all. Thrills and spills. From me, Matt Stevens, and from Hannah Walker, it has been our pleasure to host the National Circuit Race Championships. Make sure you join us on Sunday for the men's and women's Elite Road Race Championships. But for now, from Kirkcudbright, it's goodbye and stay safe.